Ryuji stands in the middle of a glowing magic circle, totally confused as a guy in a robe yells at him for not being able to use white magic. The old man in charge is losing his temper. He demands to know if they didn't just summon a legendary healer from another world like they planned. The younger guy next to him starts shaking and sweating, stammering that it was supposed to work out that way, but something clearly went wrong. The old man turns his attention back to the newcomer. He asks if Ryuji is the greatest cleric, but Ryuji can only look away and try to explain. Ryuji tells them he's just a normal office worker whose family happens to run a clinic, and hearing that makes the robed guys absolutely lose it. He stands there taking it all in. He's just a guy named Ryuji Seidu who ended up in a wild situation. As the people behind him keep screaming, Ryuji notices these guys look exactly like his boss and the junior guy from his office back home. He just watches from the side while all these robed strangers keep arguing with each other. It's a total mess. Ryuji figures he's seeing things because he's still stressed out about the disaster that happened at his actual job yesterday. He finally tells himself this whole thing has to be some weird dream his brain cooked up to deal with the stress. The old man leans in and yells, asking Ryuji if he's seriously not a cleric, and Ryuji just gives him a straight yes as the guy keeps pressing, demanding to know if he can use white magic. Ryuji just tells him he can't use it at all, so the old man loses it even more and screams, asking what a clinic is supposed to be anyway. Ryuji keeps it simple and explains that it's just the name of the hospital his family runs back home. The summoner is completely lost now. He repeats the word hospital and asks what that means for healing magic, leading Ryuji to rub his head in frustration. He tells the guy again that he doesn't have magic, trying to break down the whole mess. He realizes these guys were trying to summon the greatest cleric, who mastered white magic, but they ended up with him instead, just a regular guy whose family owns the Sato clinic in the city. Once the mistake finally sinks in, the old man bows his head as low as it can go, stuttering out a massive apology while Ryuji just stares at him. He can't help but wonder how someone even manages to make a mistake that huge. The high summoner is losing his mind. Yelling about what the deal is with this random guy they brought in, the assistant just looks stressed, explaining that he checked with magic and all Ryuji has is some useless skill called castle magic. Ryuji hears them and just feels exhausted. He thinks he's literally getting roasted even in his own dreams. The old man keeps spiraling, shouting about how they're supposed to find a healer for Princess Mia's quest to take down the demon lord, while Ryuji just stands there thinking about how this feels exactly like the drama he dealt with yesterday. He realizes that no matter where you go, people have the same problems, and he starts wondering if he should actually help her, but the high summoner has seen enough. He snaps and says he's going to go figure out a new plan, ordering his assistant to take over and deal with Ryuji on his own. The younger guy nervously agrees while Ryuji watches them, glad they're finally done fighting. The assistant bows deep and apologizes for the mess, so Ryuji just tells him to send him back home. The assistant suddenly shoves a heavy bag of coins toward Ryuji, asking him to please just take the money. He looks like he's about to have a breakdown, admitting that it's actually impossible to send a summoned person back to their own world. And before Ryuji can even process that, the massive castle doors slam shut with the guy yelling a final apology from the other side. Ryuji just sits there on the ground for a second, totally losing it when he realizes they literally just kicked him out. But he tries to calm himself down, figuring since it's probably a dream, he might as well go explore this new world. He picks up his bag of cash and starts walking away from the city gates. As he rounds the corner, he stops dead in his tracks, his jaw dropping at the sight of everything. The city is massive, filled with old buildings and crowds of people everywhere, so he keeps moving, watching people in tunics go about their day. The whole place is lively, kids are running around playing in the streets. Ryuji looks around at the massive city, totally blown away because it looks exactly like a world straight out of a video game. But as he walks through the streets, he starts to notice the locals are whispering and pointing at him as he passes by. He starts getting a bit self-conscious, wondering why it feels like every single person in the crowd is staring him down, until a local woman actually stops him, mentioning they never see that specific hair color around their parts. She points at his outfit and asks where he even got those weird clothes, making Ryuji realize just how much he's sticking out. He scratches his head, thinking it's true that his modern gear is way too flashy for a medieval setting like this, so he spots a clothing shop nearby and decides he needs to buy some local threads to blend in better. While he's stripping off his hoodie in the shop, he thinks about how it's been a long time since anyone called him a young man, making him wonder if he actually looks like a kid to everyone in this world. But then he looks at what he's supposed to wear and completely loses it, asking what the heck he's even looking at. Ryuji looks at himself and realizes he's actually gotten younger, staring into a reflection. He sees his face from back when he was in his early 20s. He starts to put it all together and wonders what this really means, because it's hitting him that maybe this whole thing isn't just some crazy dream. The kid starts thinking this might be one of those Isekai reincarnation situations, but he's confused why it happened, since he never even got hit by a truck or anything. Ryuji tries to remember exactly what went down yesterday back in modern-day Japan, where his boss was screaming about some document, yelling at the top of his lungs that the entire thing was just full of mistakes. Ryuji tried to explain that he only did it that way because the boss told him to, but the guy just snapped back, asking if he was trying to shift the blame. The junior coworker is shaking and sweating while he yells out how sorry he is for the mistake. Ryuji just sits there looking exhausted, thinking to himself that the boss is starting up with his usual routine again. The boss stomps away and barks at Ryuji to handle the mess, leaving Ryuji with no choice but to just go along with it. The junior guy keeps apologizing to Ryuji for getting him dragged into the situation, but Ryuji just brushes it off and says it's fine since the boss is always acting like that anyway. The sun goes down and the scene shifts over to the apartment building where Ryuji lives. He finally gets back to his place and just collapses onto the couch, totally wiped out from the long day. While he's sitting there, he checks his phone and sees that he's got a new message waiting from his dad. He realizes there's no way he can actually make it back to see his family since he's stuck working every single day. The text from his dad asks if he's coming home soon, but Ryuji just has to tell him that he doesn't have any time off. Ryuji starts tearing up looking at his phone, thinking about how he's going to miss out on seeing his niece. It's pretty depressing because his calendar is just a wall of X marks showing he's working every single day. He flops face down on his bed and starts dreaming about what it would be like to actually have a vacation. He just wants to go somewhere with nice views and relax without his phone or any responsibilities. The floor is covered in trash and empty energy drinks, showing just how much he hates dealing with his boss and all the work crap. So he just lets himself sink into the mattress and goes totally quiet, eventually drifting off. Back in the other world, he starts losing it and grabs his head, wondering if he actually died from being a workaholic. He looks over at the grumpy old summoner and the nervous assistant, remembering that they specifically mentioned he was summoned, but even in a fantasy world, his first thought is that he's definitely going to get in trouble for being AWOL from his job. He stops himself right there and realizes that worrying about work in this situation is exactly what was wrong with his life. Ryuji clenches his fist while thinking about his situation. If he actually had the powers of a cleric, he realizes he probably would have just ended up being a tool for the people who summoned him. So he decides this is his big shot at a fresh start, believing God sent him here just to finally catch a break. The last thing he wants is to get dragged into more drama, so he starts looking for a way out and finds a local to ask for help, explaining that he's looking for a quiet place way out in the country. The guy points him toward a carriage and says it's heading for Morado village, which is exactly what Ryuji needs. He hops on and promises himself he won't spend this life working himself to the bone. He starts daydreaming about getting to the village, thinking about grabbing a good meal and finding a nice inn, but then he looks out the window and notices the town they just left still standing tall in the distance. The massive white castle and the houses look peaceful from the road. Ryuji looks back at the view as they drive away, thinking about how that castle was actually huge. Just then, a digital window pops up out of nowhere, telling him he actually met the requirements for a new skill. The system message updates right in front of his eyes, saying that something called Castle Magic Summon is now ready to use. Ryuji completely loses it, panicking over what this castle magic thing even is. He can't believe random text is just appearing inside his head like some kind of game. While he's sitting there having a total meltdown, he tries to cover his mouth and stay quiet, but he's visibly sweating and shaking. The old lady sitting across from him gets worried, asking if he's doing okay, or if he's starting to feel sick. He tries to act natural and asks her if she's ever heard of castle magic, but as the carriage rolls through the woods, she totally mishears him, asking if he meant white magic. She tells him someone like her couldn't use that kind of power, which leaves Ryuji listening as she explains that white magic is just for healing people and treating poison. The old lady keeps explaining the local magic, saying that black magic is strictly for attacking and cursing, making it totally impossible for an ordinary person to use, since only high-ranking church officials or academy students ever learn it. Ryuji just sighs, feeling even more confused because the information she's giving him doesn't match up with his situation at all, leading him to realize that her white magic is nothing like his castle magic. He wonders if his summon skill actually calls something physically into this world, even though the names sound similar. He's dying of curiosity and starts panicking, while the lady looks at him with pity, thinking he's just carsick. The carriage finally pulls up to their destination, a place called Morado village. Ryuji doesn't even wait for the carriage to fully stop before he's jumping out, moving so fast that the old lady just watches him go. She assumes he had a bathroom emergency and says he must have been holding it in for a long time, but he's already sprinting down the street, leaving the other villagers behind in a cloud of dust. He keeps looking around for a big, open space, figuring he'll finally try out his new magic once he's alone. Ryuji is booking it through the village looking for a spot to hide, while a local guy tries to strike up a conversation, saying he's never seen him around. An innkeeper tries to scout him as a guest, but Ryuji doesn't even slow down, he's just focused on finding a place with absolutely no one around. He keeps sprinting even as people yell out that there's nothing out that way, which is exactly what he's looking for. He finally reaches a secluded clearing, and tells himself it's the ideal spot to test out his powers without anyone watching him. He stands at the edge of the trees, finally ready to see what this castle magic can actually do. But as he looks out at the field, he notices something weird. A huge patch of grass looks like it's been mowed down in a perfect circle. He steps closer to investigate the strange mark in the field and suddenly stops dead in his tracks. Right in the middle of the grass, he finds a young elf girl lying totally still, realizing someone has actually collapsed out here. He rushes over to her side as fast as he can, asking her if she's okay while he checks for a reaction. He tells her to hang in there, but she's completely out of it, leaving Ryuji stuck with a medical emergency before he can even start his magic. Ryuji keeps trying to get a reaction out of the girl, but there's no response. He realizes she's completely unconscious and starts panicking, wishing anyone was around to help, though he knows nobody would ever be out in a remote spot like this. He takes a closer look and sees she doesn't actually have any injuries, making him wonder if she's suffering from some kind of illness. The thought hits him that maybe those guys back at the kingdom were trying to summon a healer specifically to save a kid like her, so he wishes more than anything that he could use white magic right now, but he's stuck with nothing but this weird castle magic, which makes him think about how the people at the castle treated him, until the word castle itself finally clicks in his head. He repeats the name of his skill, Castle Magic Summon, over and over while trying to figure out what it actually means, and the realization finally hits him like a ton of bricks. His power might literally let him summon an entire castle out of thin air. He figures if he can actually pull off summoning a whole building, maybe there will be people inside who can help him save her. He knows he's running out of time, so he sets his jaw and decides it's all or nothing. He's going to try and use his magic right here. Ryuji holds his hand out as it starts to glow with a blinding light, calling out his castle magic. And as he gives the command to summon, a massive magic circle spreads out across the grass. The ground starts to shake, and the air fills with light as the summoning ritual hits its peak, leaving Ryuji completely stunned by how huge the spell is, realizing it really is for summoning a castle. Huge walls begin to rise out of the ground right in front of him, and he can't believe what he's seeing, but as the structure finishes forming, he notices some writing on the wall that looks way too familiar. He stares up at the tall building and realizes it's the Sado Clinic, stumbling over his words because he's looking at his actual family home from Earth, and he just starts yelling in total confusion. Then it clicks, his dad always used to call the clinic his castle, which is why the magic pulled it here. He figures since it's a clinic, there's gotta be something inside he can use to treat the patient right away. Ryuji steps into the reception area and just stands there in silence looking around the empty hall. He realizes his parents aren't anywhere, which makes him wonder if the magic only brought the actual building. He moves toward the back and worries about what happened to the medicine, but as he checks the supplies, he sees something that makes him freeze. The shelves are packed with jars, but they're just full of random weeds. He stares at the bottles, saying he's never seen these plants before, thinking maybe the supplies changed into things from this new world. He looks at the girl on the bed and tells himself to stop overthinking, so he starts grabbing jars, desperately looking for anything that works. Ryuji looks at the strange striped fruits in his hand, telling himself he's got to find a way to save that kid. He holds the 3 small fruits tightly as he tries to figure out his next move. Suddenly, a digital window pops up out of nowhere, saying he just met the conditions to get a new skill, and the message updates right away to show that he can now use something called synthesis. He just stands there wide-eyed and sweating, totally stunned by the screen, realizing that just touching the weird fruit was enough to trigger a whole new power. He wonders what synthesis even is, and starts thinking that maybe this is the key to finally making some medicine. He sets the fruits down by a mortar and pestle, reaching out to start mixing everything together. The bowl starts glowing with a strange light, and he notices the color of the mixture is changing right before his eyes. He stares at the results and says he doesn't know for sure if this will work, but he knows he has to try. Ryuji locks in and yells that he's going to do everything he can, putting all his focus into the mixture until it finally settles into a glowing, sparkling bottle of blue liquid. He looks at the finished potion and says the blue liquid is ready, silently begging for it to actually work as he carefully pours the medicine into the unconscious girl's mouth. Everything goes quiet for a second while he just watches her face, waiting for any sign of life until she finally stirs, making Ryuji cheer that the kid is finally awake. The girl sits up slowly, rubbing her eyes like she just woke up from a long nap. So Ryuji rubs the back of his neck nervously and introduces himself as Ryuji Sado. He keeps the conversation going by explaining that she was found passed out in a field, not too far away, then asks how she's feeling after taking the medicine he made. The girl takes a second to think about how she's actually feeling, until her eyes light up with literal stars, telling Ryuji she feels great while he looks on totally surprised. She looks at her own hand and says power is just surging through her, then throws a punch into the air, claiming she could even take down the demon lord right now. Ryuji starts panicking and wonders if the potion he brewed is actually that insane, but the girl just looks up and admits that's not actually true, she just wanted to say it. Ryuji lets out a breath as she cheers, saying she really does feel way better than usual. He laughs it off and tells her it's good that she's finally feeling better, starting to say that everything is great, but right in the middle of his sentence, the exhaustion finally hits and he falls flat on the floor, completely out of it. The elf girl freaks out seeing Ryuji collapse, asking him what happened, but he's just lying there totally wiped out, finally passing out from the stress. She stands over him and takes a long look at his tired face, noticing the empty potion bottle and realizing he did all of this just to help her. Looking at his lab gear, she thanks him and decides she'll save him this time. She leans in close with a huge smile, saying her name is Cecile, and Ryuji can barely hear her introduction as he starts drifting off to sleep. Cecile keeps calling out to him, asking if he can even hear her talking, but he's just too far gone, feeling so overwhelmed with the relief that he actually managed to save her life and get her back on her feet. Ryuji looks down with a tired smile, thinking about how he actually managed to save Cecile. It's something he never really expected to happen, but he's glad he could help. The scene shifts to a massive stone castle standing tall under the night sky, where some cat-eared people are standing around asking about the earthquake they just felt. They figure out that it was probably caused by summoning magic somewhere in the castle, and a cat-eared girl nearby hears them, looking worried as she repeats the word summoning, clasping her hands together, and praying that whoever arrived is someone who can help her father. Later on, the sun is shining over a modern-looking clinic building, and Ryuji is lying in a comfy bed, totally knocked out while the light hits his face. He finally starts to stir and rubs his head, feeling completely lost and wondering where he is. Ryuji stands there thinking about how he actually ended up in another world just yesterday. And beyond that, he's still trying to wrap his head around the fact that for some crazy reason, his family's entire clinic building got dragged along with him. He tries to remember what happened next, thinking back to when a kid collapsed. He remembers making some medicine for them and wonders how that kid is doing now. He decides to stop overthinking and just make some coffee, looking around for the kettle until he notices something weird. He can't find a single power outlet anywhere in the wall. It gets worse when he looks at the stove and realizes it doesn't have any buttons. He just stands there staring at it, having no clue how he's supposed to turn the thing on. Right then, Cecile walks in, rubbing her eyes and letting out a big yawn. Cecile leans in close, looking pretty confused as she asks Ryuji what he's actually doing. It takes a second for it to click, but Ryuji suddenly realizes she's the same girl from yesterday. He completely loses it, asking her if she's seriously been staying inside the house this whole time. Cecile just plays it cool, explaining that once he drifted off, she decided to sleep there too. She mentions that she even went ahead and borrowed some clothes she found lying around the room, and Ryuji tells her those belong to his sister, but figures it's fine if she's okay with wearing them. Cecile shifts the subject, asking what he was making such a huge scene about in the kitchen. Ryuji points toward the stove, trying to explain the problem he's having with it. He tells her there aren't any buttons, so he doesn't think he can actually cook anything with it. Cecile just smiles and points at the burner, telling him the whole thing runs on magic power. Cecile explains that the stove actually runs on black magic, so all he has to do is pump some magic power into it. Ryuji stares at the burner, trying to wrap his head around using magic for cooking. He realizes the appliance isn't exactly what he thought it was, since it's been completely modified to work in this new world. Cecile tells him to just watch how she does it, holding her hands out toward the stove as she starts focusing her energy to ignite the burner. A massive pillar of fire shoots up instantly, and she looks pretty proud of herself while Ryuji just stands there, staring at the flames with his eyes wide. He's totally floored by it, saying it's absolutely amazing to see actual magic happening right in front of him. Cecile smiles and says she's happy he's so into it, though Ryuji looks a little confused about where this conversation is heading next. She asks him if he thinks she's being pretty useful so far, and Ryuji just kind of goes along with it, agreeing that she is helping out. She keeps going with her point, mentioning that since she's going to be living at his place from now on, she wants to at least make herself useful around the house. She looks super confident about the plan, but Ryuji is just completely against it. He tells her there's no way that's happening because she's still a minor and needs to just go back home, which leaves Cecile looking totally. Cecile looks like she's about to lose it, stammering about how he was the one who saved her, insisting she has to stay to thank him. Ryuji just tells her she doesn't need to worry about any of that, but she's not listening at all and just pouts in the corner. Ryuji ignores her and mumbles about the weird appliances and the lack of good food, realizing his budget is pretty tight. He looks stressed while thinking about how long his gold coins are actually going to last, so he decides he's got to find a way to make some money. Cecile's ear suddenly perks up like she just heard a huge opportunity, and she gets this wild look in her eyes. She shouts that if he needs cash, she knows exactly what they should do next, leading him through the village until she announces they've finally arrived. Ryuji just follows along carrying a heavy bag, looking up at a massive building. Cecile points it out and tells him that this is the Morado Village Guild, but Ryuji isn't so sure. He asks if they can really just sell potions there, and she tells him it's totally fine, leaving him staring at the bag of bottles he prepped. He just hopes these potions he made actually sell. Cecile asks him if he really wants money that bad, and since the answer is obviously yes, she says, all they have to do is make more of those potions from yesterday and sell them for a profit. Ryuji decides to just whip something up using whatever materials he can find lying around the area, and it doesn't take long before he finishes the mix, showing off a bowl of glowing liquid. He admits he got a little too into it and ended up making 2 entire bowls full of the stuff, but they can't exactly carry open bowls around, so he suggests they find some kind of container. Since fancy bottles are way too expensive and would just eat into their profits, Ryuji thinks it's smarter to just use the basic ones they already have a ton of in stock. So they get to work and finish a whole bunch of them, filling the shelf with corked bottles. Ryuji looks at the new stock and starts comparing the first batch they made with the second one. Ryuji holds the 2 different batches up and realizes the colors are a little off, making him stare at the bottles until a system window pops up saying he's finally met the requirements to unlock the appraisal skill, which is now officially ready for him to use. Labels suddenly float over the bottles, marking them as Magic Potion A and Magic Potion B. Ryuji freaks out when he sees the floating text and notices the potions have different ranks, which is how he ended up finishing his work for the day, looking at the results of making 4 rank B potions and 6 rank A1. But he still needs to know exactly how much money these are going to fetch as he walks up to a shop counter. The lady behind the desk starts checking the stock and begins telling him that the stuff he brought in is worth way more than he expected, and Ryuji nearly has a heart attack. The shopkeeper drops a pile of coins onto the counter and tells Ryuji that this is the payment for his work, but Ryuji quickly reaches out and tells her to wait a second before she finishes the deal. He leans over the counter and explains that while some are rank B, 6 of these potions are actually rank A, leaving the shopkeeper totally confused. She picks up one of the containers and tells him they're all just in the same bottles, and she follows up by saying she can't even tell the difference between any of them. Ryuji points directly at the glass and yells that the label is written right there in plain sight, but the lady just adjusts her glasses and stares at the potion with a puzzled look on her face. She tells him there isn't anything written on the bottle at all, which catches Ryuji completely off guard, and he starts to freak out, realizing that he might be the only person who can actually see the floating text. He tries to stay calm and asks her to just take a much closer look at what he's pointing at. Ryuji is busy pointing at the bottles and trying to explain that the colors are actually different, when a hand suddenly claps down on his shoulder and a voice calls him buddy from behind. A huge scarred guy is standing right there and tells Ryuji he needs to just give it a rest, which leaves Ryuji looking pretty confused. The man leans in closer, asking Ryuji if he's really going to make these baseless accusations when he's just some newbie, and another guy in the group joins in, telling Ryuji that he's just being a bother to the receptionist at this point. A woman with long hair stares him down with a mean look, asking if he thinks he can just rip them off because they're a country guild. The whole room starts to notice the scene. Ryuji is completely surrounded by these 3 intimidating adventurers while everyone else looks on. Cecile is watching from the sidelines and starts to look really stressed out, trying to speak up and tell everyone to wait for a second. She gets caught up in the noise of the crowd as things start to get way more intense. Ryuji starts to freak out, realizing that he's accidentally made himself look like some annoying guy who just likes to complain. But just as things are peaking, a man in a vest walks into the room and asks everyone what the problem is. Thomas takes in the scene and mentions it's pretty rare for their guild to be this crowded, and as everyone calls out for the guild master, Thomas steps forward to see what all the noise is about. Ryuji tries to explain himself, stuttering that half of the potions he actually brought in are a rank, but he starts to lose hope because it feels like absolutely nobody is going to believe him. Thomas just adjusts his glasses and stays quiet for a second, thinking things over. He admits that finding a rank potions in a small rural town like this sounds pretty unlikely. Suddenly Cecile leans way over the counter and gets everyone's attention with a loud shout. and she asks Thomas directly if they have a tool on hand to measure magic power levels. Thomas is totally caught off guard by that, asking her how she even knows that thing exists. Cecile doesn't back down, she tells him to just measure the potions because a comparison will prove everything. Cecile steps up and yells at the crowd that her brother would never lie about his work. Ryuji just stands there, totally shocked that Thomas pulls out a strange white vase with a tiny sprout inside. Ryuji looks at it and asks what he's looking at, so Thomas explains it's a special plant used to measure magic power levels. He and Cecile lean in close, while Thomas says the way the plant grows actually changes depending on how high the rank of the potion is. He pops the cork off one of the bottles and decides they should start the test by using one of the B-rank potions. The guild master tips the bottle over and lets a few drops fall right onto the little sprout. Everything goes quiet for a second as the plant starts shaking and vibrating like crazy, and then the sprout suddenly shoots up, growing into a full plant with leaves and buds in an instant. Thomas adjusts his glasses, looking completely floored that the plant actually managed to bud, and he admits this potion has incredible purity even for a B rank, leaving Cecile looking pretty smug in the back. Thomas watches a single drop hit the leaf and realizes what's happening. Ryuji is sweating bullets while Cecile stays totally focused on the pot. Suddenly the plant goes wild, vines shooting out and growing at a crazy speed. The buds open up and the plant fully blooms right in front of them. Thomas practically jumps back, adjusting his glasses while shouting about the flower. He says it's been a long time since he's seen one grow like this, but there's no doubt. He yells out that they're actually looking at an A-rank magic potion. Cecile gets a huge smirk on her face and brags that she told them the truth. Someone in the background realizes she's the same girl they saw earlier. Thomas leans over the counter and asks how a kid like her knows so much about this plant, but she just plays it cool. Thomas looks at Cecile and notices her ears and that crest she's wearing, making him ask if she's actually Lord Cecile Leroy, and she just smiles and says he's right. She goes on to explain how Ryuji's potion totally restored all the magic she used, making it clear to everyone that his work is the real deal, which leads to Ryuji finally figuring out why she was passed out cold on the side of the road. The entire guild hall goes dead silent before people start shouting about her magic. Thomas starts bowing as fast as he can, apologizing over and over for the mix-up. He offers to pay for everything immediately while the crowd starts begging for a drink. Ryuji stands there looking at her, wondering who this kid really is to have this much influence, while Cecile just stands there looking completely pleased with herself. The bag of reward money makes a heavy clinking sound as they walk away. Ryuji mentions the payment ended up being a pretty huge sum, and Cecile skips along saying that's great. She suddenly spots something through the trees and yells for him to look as they both walk up to a huge, sparkling lake hidden in the woods. Cecile starts picking the plants nearby, explaining that the flowers around here are actually potion ingredients. She mentions that with these, they'll be able to brew all kinds of different stuff. Cecile holds one of the flowers out to Ryuji and calls him Big Brother, which makes him go quiet for a second before he reaches out and takes the flower. Then he calls out her name to get her attention. He looks down and thanks her for helping him out earlier, leaving Cecile standing there totally surprised. Ryuji tells Cecile that thanks to her, he was finally able to go to the guild and actually get a fair price for his potions. He holds the flower she gave him and says he's thankful for that too. Ryuji admits he couldn't have done anything on his own, which leaves Cecile looking totally shocked as he explains how exhausted he was from his old life. He mentions he originally just wanted to sightsee and not work too hard, but realizes that as long as he's hanging out with her everything is fine, and it looks like they're going to have a fun trip. Cecile gets a little flustered and calls him Big Brother in a soft voice. Then she just smiles and laughs, feeling pretty great about the whole thing. Cecile is totally pumped and yells out that they should go ahead and pick a bunch of these herbs so they can start making some brand new potions together. She tells Ryuji that as long as they work as a team, this is going to be the most fun journey ever, leaving him standing there in the field just looking at her. Cecile agrees, and Ryuji says here's to their future together as he starts thinking back on everything that happened during the day. Ryuji realizes that when he looks back at his old life, he was probably trying to do way too much on his own back when he was still living in his original world. But at the same time, he's finally starting to feel the actual joy that comes from helping and sharing things with the people around him. It's a feeling he hasn't had in years, and now he's honestly just looking forward to seeing whatever comes next for them. Ryuji celebrates the fact that they made some good cash today because of Cecile, so he decides they should grill up some meat for dinner, which gets Cecile all hyped up while she gets the stove lit and ready to go. The meat looks amazing once it's cooked, and Cecile can't get over how good it looks as Ryuji says it's finally time to eat. But then, a huge bang suddenly shakes the whole room and catches them both completely off guard. Cecile is totally confused and asks what's going on while the house keeps rattling, and then she says she felt some kind of crazy magical force hit the building. Ryuji doesn't waste any time and runs over to the front door, throwing it open to check outside, only to freeze up the second he sees what's waiting for him on the porch. There's a girl with fox ears lying right there, and Ryuji wonders if she's the one who just slammed into the house, leaving him and Cecile standing there staring at the person who just collapsed right at their front door. Ryuji rushes over to the girl, wondering if the impact from her crashing into the building was what made the whole house shake like that. She groans in pain, her face covered in sweat as she struggles to stay conscious. Seeing how bad she looks, Ryuji says they need to get her inside right away and tells Cecile to give him a hand, and Cecile jumps right to it, saying she's got it while they move the girl into the clinic. The reception desk of the Sato clinic sits empty as they rush past the files and computers, heading straight into the first examination room to get her some help. After checking her over, Ryuji finds that she doesn't actually have any broken bones or visible injuries on the outside, but he realizes that just keeping her in bed isn't really going to help her get any better. The girl is breathing heavy and looks totally miserable, making Cecile say she looks like she's in a crazy amount of pain, and they both just stand there, watching over the girl while she suffers on the hospital bed. Cecile suddenly reaches out and pulls the girl's collar open, making her gasp, which sends Ryuji into a total panic as he covers his eyes and asks her what the hell she thinks she's doing. Right there on the girl's chest, a dark and creepy glowing emblem appears, leaving Ryuji completely shocked as he asks what that thing is, while Cecile just stares at it in silence. Cecile tries to use her magic to check it out, but the energy just shatters around her hands. She looks down at the dark stain left on her fingers and realizes what she's dealing with, telling Ryuji straight up that the girl has been hit with a curse. She goes on to say it's not just any curse, but something seriously powerful, so Ryuji asks if there's anything her magic can do to help the girl out. Cecile looks pretty down as she explains that she only knows black magic, and fixing a curse like this requires white magic. Ryuji asks what they should do about the white mages in the village, but Cecile just looks completely stressed out as she tells him it's probably impossible for anyone in this village to help. She explains that there aren't any white mages with enough power around here, leaving Ryuji to wonder if there's even a single thing they can do for the girl. He looks over at his medical supplies and wonders if there's any way he can help, so he reaches into his bag and grabs his stethoscope. As soon as he touches it, a system window pops up telling him he's met the conditions to unlock a brand new skill called Examine. Ryuji can't believe he actually got a skill just by touching his old medical gear, and he stares at his hand, wondering what he's even supposed to do with a power like that. Ryuji puts on his stethoscope and decides he has to at least try to help the fox girl, telling Cecile they should just give it a shot anyway. As he begins the checkup, a system notification flashes and reveals he's unlocked the Examine skill, which immediately shows him a dark magical seal and a diagnosis window stating the girl is suffering from a 7-day curse. Ryuji is totally confused by the result and asks what a 7-day curse even is, but Cecile looks just as lost as him and admits she's never heard of anything like that either. The weight of the situation hits Ryuji hard, and he leans against the door frame for a second to catch his breath. Cecile starts to panic and asks what they are even going to do to save her, so Ryuji tells her he's going to try and make a medicine that works on curses and heads toward his supplies. He starts to doubt himself though, wondering if it's even possible to cure a magical curse with normal medicine, but he pushes those thoughts aside and starts grabbing jars of herbs off the shelf to get to work. Ryuji looks over his collection of medicine jars sitting on the shelf. He reaches out and tries using his appraisal skill to see if it helps, and sparkles fly everywhere as name tags like flocks pop up over the jars. But he quickly realizes the skill is just showing him the names of the plants. The workspace is a total mess with notes and herbs scattered all over. Ryuji starts sweating, saying no matter how hard he looks, he only sees names. He leans his head against the wall, thinking he was overconfident about potions, feeling like he got ahead of himself. Ryuji starts to question if he's actually just useless and unable to do anything else to save the girl. Cecile walks in and calls out to him, snapping him out of his head for a second. Cecile checks on Ryuji and tells him it's already midnight, suggesting he should probably get some rest since the fox girl is still in bad shape, and even though Ryuji looks exhausted, he starts to argue that he can't just leave her alone. The girl groans in her sleep, barely whispering for her dad while she struggles to hang on. Seeing her like this makes Ryuji look even more worried as he stands there watching over the bed. He tells Cecile there's no way he's stopping until he finds a way to save the kid, but Cecile just stares at him for a second before finally speaking up. She calls out to him and admits she thought it was weird when he did the same for her. She looks at him and asks why he's going through all this trouble. He's putting in so much effort for a total stranger he just met, and Cecile really wants to know why he tries so hard for people. Ryuji goes quiet for a second, looking down as he thinks about it. He finally starts to answer, saying it all goes back to a long time ago. Ryuji starts thinking back to a specific day when he was at a client's office for work, and things were wrapping up normally. He and the woman he was meeting with both bow, and Ryuji thanks her for the meeting. She says she's heading off, and Ryuji tells her to take care as she starts walking, but something catches his eye that makes him pause. He gets this weird feeling watching her go, and thinks to himself about how she's been looking pretty pale lately. It's been on his mind, though he tries to shake it off. He reminds himself that he's not a doctor like his dad was, and it's not his place. He worries that randomly telling a client they look sick would just be creepy, and figures if she actually felt bad, she'd probably realize it herself. He tries to justify staying quiet, thinking surely one of her own coworkers would notice and say something if she was really struggling, but just then his phone rings. He picks up the call and looks completely shocked by what he's hearing. Back at the office, the news starts spreading fast. One of the guys asks if it's really true that their client ended up in the hospital, and the word is she totally collapsed the night before. Everyone is talking about what a shame it is, while Ryuji just stands in the back listening, and the coworkers keep going on about how she's way too young for this. They're all hoping she can make it back to work eventually, but Ryuji is taking it hard. He's stuck thinking that if he had just spoken up and said something when he had the chance, she might not be in this mess. It hits him that he spent his whole life just coming up with excuses to not get involved. He was always finding reasons why he couldn't do anything, so getting the chance to actually step in and help someone meant the world to him. He explains that being able to help her when she was passed out right after he got to this new world was a big deal. Cecile listens as he admits that it made him feel genuinely happy. For the first time ever, he felt like he actually had a purpose and could really do something useful, though he gets a bit embarrassed and scratches his head. He remembers that Cecile was actually just exhausted and sleeping at the time, so he realizes his potion probably didn't even do anything to help her wake up. Even if it was a mistake, the feeling of trying to help stayed with him. Ryuji looks down, finally admitting that he's tired of just standing by and doing nothing. He's done with living his life full of regrets and wants to actually make a difference this time. Cecile stares at him for a second, then closes her eyes as she really feels the weight of his words, and she tells him she totally gets where he's coming from, which catches Ryuji completely off guard. Getting all fired up, Cecile puts a hand on her chest and declares she's pulling an all-nighter right along with him. She admits she doesn't really understand much about the world he came from, but she knows for a fact that if he hadn't stepped in, she wouldn't even be here right now. So she's officially on board to help him save that lady back in his world too. Looking him straight in the eye with a big smile, she tells him not to worry because it's all going to work out. She grabs his hands to snap him out of it, telling him he's got her on his side now and together they'll get it done. Cecile looks Ryuji right in the eye and tells him they can definitely save those people. And Ryuji just nods back, getting all fired up. He shouts that it's a deal, and he's going to appraise every single item they have before he starts making potions. Ryuji asks if this world has medicine that can actually break curses, and Cecile tells him it's probably a thing. She starts explaining that there are a bunch of different potions, just like they talked about back at the lake, reminding him that the one he gave her earlier was specifically for restoring mana, while the flowers they gathered can be used to whip up health potions. Cecile admits she hasn't actually seen them with her own eyes, but she's heard rumors about special potions that can cure stuff like poison and paralysis. Ryuji starts putting the pieces together, thinking that if they can make something for status ailments, they might have a chance knowing it's going to be a grind. He prepares to put in the work to make it happen. Ryuji looks at the jars and decides it's time to turn all these herbs into actual potions. He knows it might take a long time to get through everything, but he's holding out hope that at least one of these will be the key to breaking the curse. Cecile looks on as he starts messing with the scales and beakers. Feeling the pressure, he figures he can just rely on the insane stamina he built up working overtime for that toxic company back home. After clearing out everything on the first shelf, he doesn't even take a break before moving straight to the next section. He reaches for another bottle and hits it with his appraisal skill, and suddenly a message pops up saying his skill level just increased, which catches him totally off guard. His eyes widen as a new, brighter screen glows over the ingredients, showing him that he can finally see specific details, like how this Dronzer herb has a C-rank detoxifying effect. He's pretty pumped because now he can see exactly what every single ingredient does. Ryuji looks at his hands in shock, wondering if his level spiked just because he's been spamming his skill so much, and he pumps his fist, feeling pretty hyped about the sudden progress. He calls out for another appraisal, and suddenly a massive grid of info screens pops up everywhere, just like the stuff he used to read about in comics. He starts scanning every herb on the table, finding a Majora plant that has a C-rank sterilizing effect, and moves on to identify some Ben and Bemolpes plants mixed in the pile. Then he hits a maple-shaped leaf with his skill, and the name Crail flashes on the screen. The info window confirms it's exactly what he needs, a Crail leaf with a B-rank purification effect. He holds the leaf up and yells that he finally found it, knowing that with this ingredient, he can finally get to the real work at his laboratory desk. He stands over his tools and realizes that he's finally ready to start making actual potions. The potion is finally ready, a high-grade A-rank brew designed specifically to break curses. Ryuji holds it up and shouts that he's finally finished it, and Cecile can't help but stare at the glowing liquid in total awe. There's no time to waste, so they decide to get the medicine to the lady right away. Ryuji carefully tilts the flask, pouring the clear liquid into the unconscious girl's mouth as she lies there. The moment the potion goes down, a bright white light flashes, and the girl looks way more peaceful as magic spreads through her. Cecile notices right away that the girl's skin color is returning to normal, and even better, the cursed crest that was marks her has completely vanished. Ryuji pumps his fist and yells that it actually worked, feeling a massive weight lift off his shoulders, and both of them just collapse on the spot, totally wiped out but happy that she's okay. Cecile laughs through her exhaustion, admitting she honestly can't move another inch after all that stress. Ryuji joins in, saying this is probably the first time in his life he's actually worked himself to the bone until morning, but even with the girl safe, he can't help but wonder what happened to her to end up in such a mess. The fox girl is finally resting easy, but Ryuji can't help but wonder why she was even targeted by a curse in the first place, leading to him crashing hard for the night. He groggily opens his eyes the next day, barely conscious as he looks over at the clock on the wall. It's already way past noon, and he's clearly slept through half the day because Cecile peeks her head through the door right then. She asks if he's finally awake, and Ryuji sits up, calling her name while he asks how the girl is doing. He's still worried about her condition, but as he looks over, he sees that her skin looks healthy again and all that nasty magic has vanished. It's a huge relief, so he decides he should check her one last time just to be safe. He leans over her bed and activates his diagnosis skill. A magical light shines from his hand as he scans her body, and the status window confirms that she's officially in recovery. Everything looks perfect, and Ryuji and Cecile both let out a big sigh of relief. He tells the sleeping girl he's just glad she's finally getting better. The fox girl finally starts to wake up, letting out a soft groan as she opens her eyes. She looks around the room totally lost, asking where she is and what's going on. Ryuji introduces himself and asks for her name, but she's still too dazed to give a real answer because she suddenly catches a glimpse of him and loses it, letting out a loud scream while her face turns bright red. She points at him and stammers, accusing him of doing something weird while she was knocked out, which sends Ryuji into a panic as he yells that she's got it all wrong and it was just for her medical treatment. He tries to explain they only looked at the crest on her body to help her, but she just keeps screaming in shock. His voice rings out through the whole clinic as he desperately tries to tell her she's completely misunderstood everything. A little while later, things finally calm down and they sit out some tea to talk. Ryuji looks totally exhausted as he sits across from the girls, finally starting to explain the whole situation from the beginning. Ryuji starts explaining things, telling the girl she collapsed right in front of their house, so he tells her they had no other choice but to treat her since it was a total emergency. The girl takes a second to process everything, realizing that these people are actually her saviors. She apologizes for being so late with her introduction and starts to explain that she's actually from a place called Lavages, which is a country for beastmen. She finally introduces herself as Anya, looking a bit shy as she says it. Ryuji is pretty surprised to hear she's a beastman, thinking about how many different countries there are, and looking closer, he realizes she definitely has the ears and tail to prove it. He then asks her how she even ended up getting cursed, which makes her stop and think for a bit. The scene shifts to her memories of Ravages, the country where the beastmen live. The memory starts with Anya as a kid, showing her mom a huge basket of kinny fruit she just picked, and her mom thanks her, telling her to go ahead and get them boiling in the pot. Anya's mom calls out to a girl named Natalia to head out, and Natalia follows along happily, but then a massive dark magic circle suddenly blasts open right underneath them, catching them completely off guard. Anya starts crying and shaking, asking who's there while a voice threatens to tear everyone apart. This creepy figure in a cloak just stands there, going on about how they're going to destroy families, and the face behind it is this terrifying, jagged mask. It's clear right then that this is a curse. Anya explains that the force of the blast sent her flying through the air, and she looks pretty upset as she tells Ryuji that she can't remember a single thing after that happened. Ryuji is genuinely shaken by the story, wondering why anyone would be cruel enough to do something like that. Cecile mentions that her father is actually out there right now, serving in a unit that's fighting the Demon Lord, and she thinks the curse might have been sent by the Demon Lord himself or maybe one of his allies. Ryuji completely loses it when he hears that. He can't believe he's hearing about an actual Demon Lord, looking totally shocked as the reality of this world starts to sink in. Cecile notices his reaction and asks if he really didn't know anything about the situation, so she starts to explain how things work here, telling him that in this world, there is a king who rules over all the demons. These aren't just normal monsters either. She describes them as beings with crazy high magic power, all led by the one they call the Demon Lord. The situation is pretty intense because warriors and mages from every single country have been forced to team up to fight back, and the alliance is massive. It includes the human kingdom, the beastman kingdom, the elf kingdom, and even the fairy kingdom. Basically, everyone is currently at war, trying their best to hold the line against the Demon Lord's army. Ryuji gets a bit quiet, thinking back to the guys who first summoned him and wondering if they were part of all this. Ryuji starts connecting the dots. Remembering that the guys back at the castle mentioned something like this when he first arrived, Anya looks pretty shaken up, explaining that the Demon Lord's army is likely going after the commander's family just to make him suffer. Suddenly, she bolts up from the couch and says she needs to leave immediately. Ryuji is completely caught off guard. He follows her toward the door, asking where she could possibly go in her condition while Anya looks back at him with tears in her eyes, explaining that if she was the one who got cursed, then there's a huge chance her mother and sister were cursed as well, since they were all right there together. Ryuji just stands there, the weight of what she's saying finally hits him and he looks totally stunned. He tries to talk some sense into her, telling her to wait because she's still recovering and will just end up hurting herself. But Anya can't even think about resting when her family is out there in danger, looking desperate to get moving. Cecile steps in and agrees with Ryuji, telling Anya that she really isn't in any shape to be heading out yet. Cecile stands there with her arms crossed as Ryuji points out that it's completely reckless for Anya to go searching alone when she doesn't even have a clue where her family is, adding that she needs to remember her curse actually came from the Demon Lord. He keeps going, telling her that even if she does manage to find them all by herself, there's no way she could break the curse on her own. Anya just stares at the floor with tears in her eyes, unable to say a word while Ryuji watches her closely, seeing how much pain she's in. It hits him that Anya is really just a kid, probably only around middle school age, and he tells her he understands how hard it must be to know her family is in that kind of danger. He grips his clothes, admitting that if it were his own family, he'd want to rush to help them right away too, though he jokes to himself that his old man could probably handle whatever came his way. Finally, Ryuji calls out to Anya, making her look up in surprise as he decides what to do next. Ryuji looks right at Anya and asks if she wants to join them, which leaves her looking pretty confused. So he explains that he and Cecile are already planning to travel the world. He tells her they haven't actually picked a destination yet, so he comes up with a plan and suggests that they all travel together while they look for her family. Anya just stands there in total shock, and Ryuji turns to Cecile to see what she thinks about the new plan. Cecile gives a big smile and says she thinks it's a great idea, pointing out that having Anya around will help them break the curse. And besides, it's a way better move for Anya than trying to search for her people alone. Cecile finishes by promising that she's going to help out with everything too. Ryuji and Cecile both look at Anya and say her name, waiting to see what she thinks about the big plan. But Cecile doesn't wait long and shouts that they should hit the guild for info right away. She keeps going, saying they also need to go buy a bunch of stuff to get ready for the trip, and tells Anya she's going to love the bread here. Anya is just staring at the bread, totally confused about what's happening all of a sudden, so Cecile reminds her that they're officially going on a journey together. Cecile winks and says her plan is to travel and eat good food at the same time, which makes Ryuji think she's really just doing things at her own pace, but it works, because Anya starts giggling and Ryuji is happy to see her smile. He says she's right, because it'd be a total waste if they were exhausted when they find her family. Cecile is totally fired up and tells everyone they need to eat a ton of good food to get their energy up, so they're actually ready when the time comes to save Anya's family. Anya gets really emotional and starts tearing up, but she has a huge smile on her face while she manages to thank them for everything they're doing. Ryuji and Cecile just stand there smiling back at her, feeling good about the plan. The group heads over to the Morado village merchant guild to get things moving. The guild master Thomas sees them walk in and gives them a warm welcome, saying it's great to see them again. He greets Cecile and Ryuji formally as they walk up to the counter, and right away, Thomas brings up how that potion Ryuji made has become a massive hit lately. He says people are even traveling from the next town over just to buy it, which makes Ryuji laugh a little nervously because he didn't expect it to blow up like that. As Anya looks on, Thomas switches gears and asks what actually brought them into the guild today. After they explain the situation, Thomas just nods and says he understands the deal. Thomas suggests that if they want real answers, they should probably head over to the Merchant Guild's headquarters first, explaining they'll find way more information there than they will at this small branch. Ryuji asks where exactly this place is located, so Thomas points to a map and says they can reach a place called Deneva in about 10 days by carriage. Ryuji can't believe it's that far and starts stressing out, thinking 10 days is a crazy long trip. He figures he only feels that way because back in Japan, you could basically get across the country in a single day. Thomas stops for a second and mentions that a big earthquake actually hit just 2 days ago, and Cecile jumps in, saying that earthquake was seriously massive. He tells them he even felt a huge wave of magic power coming off it, which catches Thomas off guard, as he asks if Cecile really felt all that energy too. Ryuji starts doing the math in his head and realizes 2 days ago was the exact day he was brought to this world, and he starts getting hit with this realization that the earthquake might have been caused by his summoning. He feels pretty bad about the trouble he might have caused by mistake. Thomas eventually shakes it off though, saying he's getting off track. Thomas points out on the map that the recent earthquake actually caused the main road heading west to collapse, so he starts figuring out a detour. He realizes that if they try to go left and travel all the way around the capital instead, the whole trip is probably going to take 20 days. Ryuji and Anya completely lose it when they hear that, and Anya looks like she's about to faint from the shock. Ryuji panics and tries to catch her as she starts to spiral. While they're stressing, Cecile leans in to get a better look at the map, and tells everyone to just wait a second checking to see if they just need to head northwest to reach their destination. She realizes that if that's the case, they can actually just cut straight through the massive forest. Thomas is pretty surprised by the idea, but Cecile keeps explaining her plan. She says once they make it through the woods, they'll hit another town where they can easily catch a carriage. She asks Thomas if she's right and he quickly agrees and he gets all excited. He says that since they have Cecile with them, taking a shortcut through the forest is actually possible. Cecile talks about how she's as impressive as ever, and Thomas totally backs her up while Ryuji just watches them feeling pretty confused about why the guild master treats Cecile with so much respect. Moving on to the forest edge, Ryuji looks at the dark tree line and decides it's better if they wait until tomorrow morning to head inside, so he suggests they just set up his family home right there at the entrance for the night. He steps forward and calls out a summon, triggering a massive swirl of magic as the building starts to appear out of nowhere, which leaves Anya completely shocked. She can't believe her eyes as the giant clinic just shows up right in front of her. Ryuji explains that he's able to pull the house out or pack it away whenever he wants, meaning they can take their time in the woods and just use the house as a home base whenever they need to rest. But he admits his cooking is basically just grilled meat and veggies. Anya gets a sudden look of inspiration and whips up a massive gourmet feast for everyone. Ryuji can't believe the spread as she tells them to eat up. Ryuji is actually crying because the food is so good, stuffing his face and thanking Anya for the meal while she tells him it's no big deal. Since he's the one taking care of her, she wants to do whatever she can to help out mostly because she's obsessed with how high-class the seasonings in Ryuji's kitchen are. Anya looks totally hyped, saying that having all these tools made cooking way more fun than usual. She's never seen a stove that runs on magic like this before, and even the grill for roasting fish seems like a total game changer to her. She points out that there's so much sugar and pepper just sitting on the shelves, which makes her feel like she's working in a kitchen belonging to some high-level noble. Ryuji gets a bit nervous, realizing that basic seasonings must be worth a fortune around here, so he reminds himself to stay sharp about how different things are in this world compared to back home. Anya is sitting at the table totally impressed, telling Ryuji he's an amazing guy for even being able to make medicine, but Ryuji brushes it off, saying she's actually the impressive one for being such a great cook while she's still just a kid. Anya looks at him with a blank stare and casually mentions that she's actually 20 years old, making Ryuji completely lose his mind because no matter how he looks at her, she doesn't look a day over 13. She explains that it's a common mistake for people who haven't spent much time around beastmen before it turns out her people live way longer than humans do, so their bodies just grow at a much slower pace. The realization hits Ryuji pretty hard as he realizes he still doesn't know the first thing about how this world works, and he figures he really needs to start studying up on things if he's going to survive here for the long haul. Once he finishes his plate, he lets out a satisfied sigh and thanks Anya for the great food. Just then, Cecile runs up and asks him to go take a bath together, which leaves Anya standing there looking completely stunned. Anya stands there trying to process if Ryuji and Cecile are actually going to take a bath together, feeling completely confused. But Ryuji explains that since so much has happened lately, he's only had time for quick showers and figures since they're both guys. It's a good way for them to bond while they clean up. He hypes Cecile up and tells him it's time to hit the bath, leaving Anya yelling his name in shock as she just stands there in the dark, totally speechless at the situation. Once they get inside, Ryuji points out the washing machine and tells Cecile to put his clothes in there. And while Ryuji starts washing his hair in the shower, he notices that Cecile is taking a really long time. Suddenly the kid calls out for help, whining that he can't get his clothes off. Ryuji looks back, wondering what could possibly be giving the kid so much trouble just trying to undress until he sees Cecile struggling because his shirt got completely snagged on his pointed elf ear. Ryuji is staring at the situation with a look of total shock as the shirt finally starts to move, leading to the two of them struggling in the bathroom, with Ryuji grunting as he tries his best to help pull the stuck clothes. Suddenly the shirt pops loose, and he lets out a surprise sound while Cecile says it finally came off. Everything goes white for a second as the realization hits that Cecile might actually be a girl. Ryuji completely loses it, his whole face turning red as he stands there frozen after seeing the truth, but he immediately starts shouting apologies and panicking, while Cecile just stands there confused and asks what's wrong. That's when Anya walks in and starts screaming at the top of her lungs, covering her face in total embarrassment at the scene. Ryuji yells out one last apology as he bolts out of the room, leaving the girls behind, and later that night he's just sitting on his bed wrapped in a blanket, thinking about how that day was the moment he realized he doesn't know anything at all about how things work in this world. Cecile asks him what's wrong, but Ryuji is just stuck in his head thinking about how he needs to make sure a mess like this never happens again. He tells himself that he really needs to learn some common sense in this world, while a mysterious girl with butterfly wings watches him from the shadows, and she notices how noisy it's getting outside of her forest, keeping her eyes locked on the light where the group is staying. Peeking through the leaves with a curious look, the girl wonders if she's actually looking at a real human for the first time. Morning finally comes around and Anya is already up in the kitchen, humming to herself while she gets busy chopping up vegetables for a big meal. She finishes up and announces that everything is ready, laying out a full spread of soup, salad, and a fresh omelet. The last thing she needs is the toast, so she waits for the bread to finish up and it pops out of the toaster looking perfect. Anya calls out to Ryuji that it's time for breakfast, right as someone's eye slowly starts to drift open in the morning light. Over in the bed, Cecile is still totally passed out and talking in her sleep, complaining that the mister is being way too rough with her. Ryuji just looks down at her with a confused expression, asking her what kind of weird dream she's having to say stuff like that. Ryuji wakes up and realizes Cecile is still in his spot, asking why she's even in his bed while Anya stands right there taking it all in. He completely loses it when he sees her in the doorway, shouting her name and asking exactly how long she's been watching them like that. Anya just stares back with a totally blank face while Ryuji tries to explain that it isn't what it looks like. He claims he had no idea Cecile had crawled in with him. The door slams shut before he can finish his sentence, and Ryuji yells out for her to come back. Anya walks down the stairs looking completely drained, quietly apologizing for interrupting, while Ryuji keeps screaming from the room that this is all a huge misunderstanding. The scene shifts to the deep woods northwest of Morado village, where the group has finally started their journey through the thick trees. Cecile is in high spirits, jumping around and cheering that they're heading for Chineva next as the group makes their way down the forest path. She looks back at the others with a big smile, mentioning that if they keep up this speed, they'll be clear of the woods in just 3 days. Anya smiles and thanks her for the motivation, but Ryuji is already dragging behind looking like he's about to collapse from the hike. Cecile turns to him and suggests they push themselves to walk even longer today to save time. Ryuji just looks at her in shock, barely able to get a word out. Ryuji looks pretty beat as they walk through the woods, apologizing to Cecile for being the one holding everyone back. He's hunched over and covered in sweat, admitting that his body has finally hit its absolute limit. He's just dragging his feet while complaining about how much his legs are burning from all the lactic acid. And on top of that, his lower back is totally trashed from constantly stopping to gather herbs along the trail. He thinks about how there's no way a former office worker like him can compete with the stamina of locals like Cecile and Anya. But he tells himself he's got to stay strong because he's the oldest one there and can't be the first to start complaining. Suddenly he points off into the distance, shouting that there's some flying girl over there, which catches Anya and Cecile off guard, and they immediately go rushing off to find her while Ryuji hangs back with a sneaky look. With the girls finally distracted, he pulls out a bottle and starts chugging it down as fast as he can, and the recovery meds kick in right away, making him glow with energy as he finally starts feeling like himself again. Ryuji thinks to himself about how lucky it was that he spent the previous day prepping all those potions because the night before, he realized that if he was going deep into the forest, he'd definitely need some backup supplies, and the first thing on his list was a stamina recovery potion, which would keep him going during the long trek, and once he finishes the rank B nutritional tonic. He figures he might as well mass-produce the stuff since it's so useful. He looks over at the clock and realizes that just making a few bottles took way longer than he expected, and by this point, his eyes are really starting to feel the strain from all the late-night work. But he decides to whip up some eye drops while he's at it, ending up with a rank of vision enhancement potion that works so well he can see everything outside the window perfectly, even though it's pitch black out there. He gets this crazy look of confidence, telling himself that with these potions, he'll never get tired in the woods, and clutching the bottle, he jokes that he won't ever need those world-famous energy drinks to stay awake ever again. Cecile shouts over to Ryuji that there definitely isn't a flying girl anywhere nearby, making Ryuji wonder if his eyes were just playing tricks on him after all. He brushes it off and tells everyone they need to keep moving, looking pretty pumped up while Cecile just stands there wondering why he's acting so weird. As they walk, Ryuji mentions that they need to pick up the pace before it gets dark, completely missing the butterfly fluttering right past his head. Suddenly, something smacks Ryuji right in the middle of his face with a loud thud, catching him totally off guard. He groans about something hitting him and starts rubbing his eyes because of all the weird, sparkling powder that filled the air on impact. While Ryuji coughs and tries to figure out what the dust is, an angry voice suddenly yells at him from the cloud of sparkles. A tiny girl with massive butterfly wings appears out of nowhere, looking absolutely furious as she screams at him to watch where he's walking. The fairy snaps that this kind of stuff is exactly why she hates humans, leaving Ryuji blinking in total confusion as he tries to process what's happening. Ryuji finally sees her clearly and yells out that there's actually someone there, while the fairy just stands her ground with an annoyed look on her face. Anya asks him what's wrong, and then Cecile asks him who he's even talking to. It turns out Ryuji is the only one who can actually see the girl. Ryuji looks pretty stressed and asks the girls if they really can't see the tiny person standing right there. He starts rubbing his eye, thinking to himself that his weird ability to see her might be because of those modern eye drops, and then he pulls out a small VZ Pro container and asks the girls to try looking through the liquid inside. Cecile says she'll give it a shot. Anya and Cecile look through the container and get a huge shock from what they see. Cecile shouts that he was right while Anya yells out in total shock that there really is a fairy standing in front of them, which immediately annoys the little girl, who waves her arms and tells them to stop yelling out of nowhere. Cecile notes that the girl seems way angrier than she expected, while Anya admits this is her first time ever seeing a fairy. Anya looks at the flying girl and asks if all fairies are naturally this short-tempered. Ryuji mentions that the stories he knows about fairies make them sound exactly like this, but the fairy snaps back that they aren't all like her, and then she gets a scary look in her eye as she starts explaining the real reason she's so mad. The tiny girl turns around and points an angry finger, yelling that it's all because Ryuji bumped into her and made her scatter all that special pollen she spent forever trying to collect. Ryuji gets a look of realization on his face and asks if she means that weird powder from earlier, but then the fairy starts clutching her head in a panic, explaining that the powder was a key ingredient for the queen's beauty serum. She starts crying into her hands, worrying about what's going to happen to her since she can't hit her work quota. So Ryuji looks pretty confused and asks if fairies actually have to deal with quotas like that, while Anya watches the girl break down. Anya looks over at Ryuji with a dead serious expression and tells him he's in huge trouble now, leaving him wondering what's up until she explains that the fairy queen is a real piece of work. She says that if this little girl can't finish the job and the serum doesn't get made for the queen, then there's a good chance a bunch of angry fairies are going to come storming right into the clinic. Anya explains that while fairies don't have much physical power, they have the special ability to grant blessings to other races, so pissing them off is a bad move because it could completely ruin their entire journey. She warns Ryuji that he might even end up spending the rest of his life working as the queen's personal serum maker, and the thought of being a slave to the fairy queen has Ryuji shaking. He thinks the whole situation sounds like a total nightmare. Ryuji calls out to get the little girl's attention, and she looks back pretty confused that they haven't left yet. He asks if they can help her collect the pollen she needs, which catches her completely off guard. Ryuji admits the queen sounds pretty scary, and since he's the one who ruined the pollen, he wants to help out. Plus, he's good at making medicine. He even suggests that he might be able to just make the beauty serum for her, leaving the little fairy staring at him in total silence. She gets a grumpy look on her face and huffs, telling him she'll let him help since he's insisting on it so much. She turns her head away and tells him her name is Garnet, acting all tough while finally introducing herself. The group starts their search for the Temazeusa pollen, which is usually found and collected from the Temazeusa flowers that only bloom during the night. Garnet mentions it's usually tough for humans to find stuff in the dark, but Ryuji thinks he'll be okay and pulls out a small bottle, putting a single drop into his eye to help him see better. His eyes start sparkling immediately after the medicine starts taking effect. Moving on, Ryuji is totally blown away by how clear everything is. He can see every single detail in the forest, so he decides to mix his clear vision with his appraisal skill to speed things up. He scans the plants until an A-rank Temazeusa flower pops up, noting it's used for skincare. He lets everyone know he found the spot, pointing out a patch of glowing flowers nearby. Anya is totally amazed by the sight, saying the flowers look so pretty in the dark. Ryuji tells the group they should start collecting pollen from the flower right now. It's a bright night with the moon hanging over the quiet forest trees as a massive glowing pile of pollen starts to stack up on the pedestal. And Garnet can't even believe her eyes. She says there's so much of it there. Ryuji looks over the loot and suggests they use it to make a beauty serum. He gets to work right away, mixing the sparkling white powder together until he announces that it's finally finished, a botanical skin toner in a butterfly bottle. He holds out the tiny fairy and asks if she wants to try using it, but after she puts some on, Garnet is totally shocked, saying it's way more moisturizing than usual. She thanks him while dancing around, happy that the queen won't have a reason to punish her. Garnet is basically glowing with how happy she is, and Ryuji just smiles glad it worked out. She looks at him and says even though he's a human, he's actually a solid guy. She even tells him she's sorry for doubting him, leaving Ryuji a bit surprised. She decides to thank him by giving him a fairy's blessing. Ryuji isn't really sure what that means, so he asks her what a blessing even is. Turns out, getting a fairy's blessing is a huge deal because it's supposed to pull out all the hidden powers a person has inside of them. Ryuji loses it and asks if she's really sure about this, but Garnet says it's totally fine, this serum is going to get her out of working so hard for a bit. Ryuji just stares, realizing that even in this world, people are still corporate slaves. Garnet tells Ryuji they need to step outside, but he's confused and asks if they can't just do it right there in the room. She explains that she wants to find a big, open space just to be safe. Apparently, the last time the fairy queen gave a blessing to an elf kid, things didn't go so well. The power ended up spinning out of control and turned into a total disaster, making Ryuji think that the kid must have been some kind of crazy prodigy. Garnet mentions that her own blessing will probably be a lot weaker than the queen's power, but she still tells him to be proud after all. He's the first person she's ever chosen to bless. Two massive wolves with glowing eyes and horns stare out from the dark, and Ryuji realizes he's suddenly surrounded by a whole pack of them. He starts losing it, wondering what these things even are and if he's looking at real monsters. Garnet starts panicking, shouting that the monsters were drawn right to them by the scent of humans, which makes Ryuji completely freak out, asking if these things are really trying to eat him. Cecile peeks out and asks him what's wrong, wondering why he isn't using his divine protection, but Ryuji just yells back that there's no time for that right now. He tells everyone to stay back because of how dangerous it is, but then Cecile gets a good look at the monsters and casually says they're just dogs, leaving Ryuji totally confused. She complains that she can't get any sleep with all the loud crying going on, so she just points away and tells the monsters to go somewhere else. With one quick motion, a massive force hits the monsters and sends them flying, creating a huge blast of energy that wipes out the whole pack in an instant. Ryuji is standing there in total shock with his jaw practically hitting the floor, but Cecile just looks back at him with a casual smile and tells him that everything is fine now. Ryuji asks if she's actually doing okay after that explosion, but she just looks at him like she has no idea what he's worried about. He points out that she just used a massive spell, which is a pretty big deal, though Cecile just shrugs it off, saying that kind of magic isn't really a burden for her at all. She laughs and mentions the only reason she fainted when they first met was because she tried it way too many times, leaving Ryuji finally putting the pieces together, realizing that the crazy power he saw back then was hers all along. While they talk, Garnet is running through the grass, totally stunned by the wavelength of the power she's sensing nearby. She looks completely blown away, unable to believe that this kind of energy is even possible, so she points a shaking finger at Cecile and asks if she somehow has a fairy's blessing. Cecile thinks for a second and says she's pretty sure the name was Titania, but the second the name drops, Garnet looks like she's seen a ghost and starts sweating like crazy. Garnet stands there frozen for a moment before she suddenly tells them both to wait, and then she just bolts into the sky. Ryuji reaches out and asks what happened to the blessing she was supposed to give, but she's already gone. Cecile stands there looking confused and asks why the fairy just left, but Ryuji has no idea. He looks pretty bummed out and mentions how they didn't end up getting the blessing after all, though Cecile tries to stay positive, saying fairies are just fickle like that and might show up again whenever. She decides to change the subject, telling him that more importantly, they should walk a bit further today to pick up the pace. Ryuji sounds a little surprised by the sudden hustle, but Cecile explains that if they keep moving right up until bedtime, they can make up a ton of lost time. Ryuji starts worrying about their supplies and asks if they'll have enough potions to make it through, but for now, the story shifts back to a place called Grigon, a quiet town filled with rows of wooden houses. A girl walks through the streets looking totally lost, asking herself what could have happened to her home, as she looks around with tears in her eyes, barely able to speak about how everyone in town is suffering. She stands in the middle of the square and says it can't be real, seeing people collapsed all over the ground, so she starts running as fast as she can, telling herself she has to hurry and get to the guild. She grips her sword and says there's only one thing that can save everyone now, and that's the potion. While back in the present, Ryuji is struggling, asking if they really have to keep up this pace through the forest. He takes a look at his clothes and sighs, saying they've gotten seriously dirty from all the traveling they've done. It's already been 3 days since they entered the woods on their way to Geneva, but Cecile is still full of energy. Ryuji realizes the potion's effect is actually letting them move way faster than they planned. But the downside is that this entire forest is absolutely swarming with monsters at every turn, which makes Ryuji finally understand why Thomas said only Cecile could handle this rough path. He thinks back to yesterday when some aggressive pig monster rammed into him, and now he just wants to leave this forest behind. Back at his parents' house, he mentions having plenty of clean clothes to change into and asks Anya if she can throw his stuff in the washer, only to stop dead in his tracks when he sees what's happening in the laundry room, where Anya is standing over the machine in a nurse outfit, saying they can still make it. Ryuji's face turns bright red as he yells her name and asks why she's dressed like that, while a flustered Anya explains she just wanted to do laundry since it was a nice day. Anya explains that she completely ran out of clean clothes to change into, so she ended up looking around the clinic's examination room and found a white nurse's tunic tucked away in the back, which she decided to borrow since she had nothing else to wear. She sees Ryuji staring and asks if she made a mistake putting it on, but he just stands there with his arms crossed, taking it in. Ryuji gets a good look at the outfit and tells her it actually suits her perfectly, which catches her off guard. He goes on to explain that in his world, the people who wear that specific gear are known as angels, and the word alone has Anya's jaw dropping. He describes how these angels wear white robes and can take away a patient's pain just by smiling, calling them the ultimate healers, and mentions how the top-tier doctors use tons of angels to get famous and rich, which makes Anya feel like she's part of something huge. Fully pumped up, she tells Ryuji that she's going to do her absolute best to be useful to him as his angel from now on. Ryuji starts to panic and realizes he was just talking on a whim, but she's already taken everything he said way too seriously. Moving on, Anya grabs the laundry and says she's going to go hang it all outside right now, leaving Ryuji to just thank her for the help. Cecile peeks from around the corner looking pretty annoyed and calls out to her brother. Ryuji turns around, just giving her a casual morning greeting like everything is normal, but Cecile is definitely pouting, complaining about how he only gave her sister the angel title. Ryuji is totally confused and asks her what she even means by that. He stammers for a second, trying to think fast, and then has a sudden lightbulb moment. He tells Cecile that he's seen how hard she's been working lately, and he lets her know that he's actually been thinking of a much more special role just for her. Cecile's eyes light up instantly, looking completely hooked on the idea. She asks if he's for real, and Ryuji reassures her that she doesn't need to compare herself to Anya at all. He's right in the middle of explaining it when Anya comes running out of the woods looking panicked in her nurse outfit. Ryuji yells out to her, asking if there's a monster or some kind of trouble, but Anya says it's not that, it's just that she heard a super creepy voice coming from deep inside the trees. She points back toward the dark forest, and Ryuji wonders what kind of voice she could be talking about. Right then, a strange sound cuts through the air from the thick brush nearby, leaving the sound of a weird muffled voice trailing off as it echoes through the leaves. The voice keeps stuttering out random sounds from the shadows. Ryuji tenses up and gets ready for anything, watching the bushes closely as something moves around inside. The voice from the thicket keeps stuttering, barely getting out the end of a word, then a dirty hand reaches through the leaves. The person keeps begging for a potion while stumbling out, looking like they've been through a lot, and they let out a loud groan. Ryuji and Anya both freeze up, looking totally caught off guard by the person suddenly appearing like that. Ryuji panics and asks if it's some kind of monster, then yells for everyone else to run back inside the house, while Cecile tells him to wait, noticing something familiar about the person dragging themselves across the dirt. The figure can't keep their balance anymore and just collapses right there on the grass. As they get closer, Ryuji sees that it's actually a woman covered in dirt and scratches, definitely not a monster, so they quickly carry her back to the clinic to get her cleaned up and checked out properly. Once she's settled in a bed, Ryuji and Anya stand by her side, watching over her while she's still totally out of it. Ryuji holds his hand over her and starts his examine skill, trying to see what kind of injuries he's dealing with. The scan finishes and the results pop up. The woman is infected with something called plague toxin. Ryuji looks pretty stressed while explaining that she's dealing with a really powerful type of poison, so Cecile tries to think back, wondering if they passed any dangerous plants or monsters that could have caused this. Ryuji remembers he actually has some leftover antidote powder from when they first went into the forest. He starts mixing the medicine into a glass of water, saying they should get her to drink it right away. As soon as she takes it, she starts coughing it right back up. It's clear the medicine isn't working at all. The problem is that a detox only works if the potion is strong enough to match the poison, and Ryuji realizes the supplies he has at the clinic probably aren't high enough rank to handle a toxin like this. But then the woman suddenly pushes herself up and starts coughing, telling a shocked Ryuji that it's actually enough. She looks him in the eye, still sounding a bit weak, but says she's already starting to feel a little better. Lara looks like she's about to pass out, and Ryuji points out that she definitely doesn't look like she's okay yet. She introduces herself as Lara and says she works for the guild over in Grigon. Looking down, she explains that everyone back in her town suddenly collapsed from the same weird sickness, so she figured she could make it to the royal capital and find a potion that would actually work. Since her own symptoms were pretty mild at first, she thought she could make the trip and bring back help. But the toxin ended up spreading way faster than she thought, and she barely made it before she went down. Ryuji realizes she was taking the forest path because the main road is blocked. Cecile thinks they're all stuck in the same mess. He starts wondering if the potions at the capital are actually as great as everyone says. But then it hits him that the capital is just where all the best ingredients are kept. Ryuji looks pretty stressed, while admitting that he doesn't have any of those high-tier supplies with him to fix this. Ryuji looks pretty beat after complaining about his lack of supplies, and Cecile just stares at him wondering what he's even talking about. She reminds him that they're literally standing in the middle of the forest, which makes him realize he might have missed something. Cecile explains that the forest actually has way better ingredients than any normal place, and Ryuji can't believe he didn't know that. She breaks down how the whole ecosystem works, saying the monsters eat the grass and the plants grow by soaking up nutrients from the strong creatures. That's why top-tier plants grow here, just like the special pollen those fairies were looking for the other day. Cecile looks super proud of herself, while bragging that the cycle here is on a whole different level from some basic grassland. Ryuji starts to get hyped as he realizes that if there are scary monsters around, then that means there are definitely going to be some high-grade materials for him to find. He starts laughing like he just won the lottery, feeling a lot better about their situation now that he has a plan. Ryuji lets out a little yell when she moves in close, but Cecile just tells him it's okay and promises she'll stay right by his side. Lara's hand grips the bedsheet tight, clearly struggling as she tries to force herself out of bed. She begs to go with them even though she's clearly in pain, letting out a groan as her body gives out. The others tell her she needs to stop pushing herself so hard since she's still recovering. But Lara points out that while they're just sitting around, the people in her town are still in danger. Anya stands there silently looking down with a worried expression as the weight of the situation hits her. Just then, a hand reaches out and firmly grabs onto Anya's shoulder to stop her from worrying. Cecile calls her name and tells her not to worry, promising that she'll stay behind to keep a close eye on Lara. She looks over at Ryuji and tells him and the others to head out and gather the materials while they still have time. Ryuji starts to leave but looks back, thanking her while asking if she's really going to be okay by herself. Cecile's expression gets serious as she tells him to just leave it all to her, looking totally locked in. Anya stands there in her new nurse outfit looking totally determined. She says she's going to do her absolute best to play the part of an angel and make the uniform proud. Ryuji feels a bit guilty and apologizes for making her wear it, but Anya is already fired up and ready to go. Later on, the group is trekking through the woods, and Ryuji mentions how annoying it is that they still haven't cleared the forest. He's pretty stressed about the fact that they walked straight into a territory crawling with monsters. Anya doesn't seem to mind though, skipping along while Ryuji double-checks his bag. He says he brought every single potion he's brewed so far just in case things get ugly, but he's still caught up in his head, wondering if he's even going to be okay out here. Right as he's worrying, there's a loud rustle in the bushes, and something slams right into him. He lets out a yell as the impact sends him flying back while Anya just watches, totally frozen in shock. Ryuji hits the ground hard and groans in pain, realized he's managed to run into something yet again. Anya spots what it is first and lets out a gasp. Just as Ryuji starts to realize who his new guest actually is, it's that same wild pig from the day before, and it looks just as mean as the last time they saw it. The creature huffs as it stares them down, and Anya asks if that thing is really just a wild boar. The monster narrows its eyes, locking onto them like it's about to charge. Ryuji takes off running, yelling about how he is completely done with this forest and just wants out. They scramble toward the nearest tree, and Ryuji mentions the thing is moving way too fast to even think about using magic. He tells Anya they should just stay up in the branches for now until the coast is clear, but suddenly he hears a loud rip. He lets out a yell, realizing something is going wrong with his gear while his bag completely gives out. He watches in a total panic as all the potions he worked on start spilling into the air. Ryuji screams out as the bottles hit the ground, shattering right over the boar's head, and the liquid soaks straight into the monster's mushroom cap. It stands there for a second, and then the whole area just erupts as the combined potions trigger a massive reaction. Ryuji panics as he looks back, worried that his spilled potions might have actually made the monster even stronger. He tries to remember which bottles broke, thinking if it was a stamina boost they're both in huge trouble. Suddenly, the beast goes sliding across the forest floor while Anya watches. Completely lost, Ryuji peeks out from behind a tree and yells that the thing's head just popped right off. Anya drops down to the ground as Ryuji starts feeling a bit guilty. Saying he might have done something messed up with his magic, Anya walks over to the giant mushroom cap lying in the dirt to see what's going on. She looks really closely at the underside of the cap and realizes it wasn't the monster's head at all. Ryuji points out it was just a parasite living on the boar, which leaves Anya pretty shocked. He figures the mushroom just slid right off, because the face lotion potion made the boar's fur way too glossy, giving the whole situation a weirdly lucky ending that neither of them expected. The boar lies there on the forest floor, just shaking and twitching, until it suddenly snaps out of it and looks around totally confused. As the animal runs off into the trees, Anya says it looks like it's completely calmed down, which is when Ryuji starts looking at the mushroom and says it might actually be a high-rank material. Anya seems surprised, so he explains that since it was sucking up nutrients so directly, the thing must be packed with energy. Anya finally gets what the strong nutrients part meant and says the whole cycle is pretty nasty. Ryuji reaches out to the mushroom cap and says they should check the effects for now. And then the appraisal shows the Inoko mushroom actually has a rank detoxification effects. Ryuji gets super hyped and says with a material like this, he might be able to make an even stronger potion, telling Anya they need to get this stuff back home right away. Anya carries the massive mushroom back while complaining about how heavy it is, leaving Ryuji totally wiped out. He lets out a big sigh after finishing the brewing process, and he notes that while he finished the Banacare potion, something feels a bit off despite its A-rank detox power. He slumps over the table, saying he can't believe that huge mushroom only made 3 small bottles. He takes one to the clinic and tells Lara to try it, so Lara takes the bottle and swallows the whole thing in one big gulp. She starts glowing right away as the medicine begins to fix everything wrong with her. Lara sits up and says the pain is completely gone, which makes Anya really happy. Ryuji thanks Anya for looking after their patient so well, and she just blushes and says she's happy she could actually be of some help. Cecile sees Ryuji being nice to everyone else and pouts, demanding that she gets a reward for her help too. So Ryuji gives her a head pat and thanks her for all the hard work she's put in. But then Lara walks over looking completely serious. She suddenly grabs Ryuji's hands and yells his name, which totally throws him off as he tries to figure out what's going on. She looks him right in the eyes and begs him to help save her city, and Ryuji starts to panic a bit. He tells her to calm down because she's holding his hands a little too close, but Lara doesn't stop there. She tells him that if he saves her home, he can have as much of her as he wants, leaving Ryuji's head spinning. He starts to wonder if the poison was actually cured, or if it's still messing with her brain, so he quickly tells her that she really doesn't need that kind of extreme resolve just to get his help. Ryuji starts planning out the trip, mentioning they should find a carriage once they finally clear the forest area. He knows they have to hurry, because if the people back in town don't get their energy back soon, things will get worse. Ryuji looks confident and smiles at the group. He points out that if things go south, they'll all be in trouble anyway, so he rallies everyone, telling them they should all help the people of Grigon together. Lara stares at him in disbelief, completely stunned by his willingness to step up, and she closes her eyes as she starts to cry from the relief. She gives a firm yes in response, finally feeling like there's actually some hope. The group finally arrives at Grigon. It's a massive town filled with tall, crowded buildings, and Lara points out a large building, explaining to Ryuji that it's the guild where she works. Lara looks around while they walk, noting that the place is way bigger than Morado village, which leads to her bursting through the front doors and yelling out that she's finally back. She immediately asks how everyone is doing, looking pretty frantic as she sees a guy who looks like the guild master. He's totally stressed out, saying things have only gotten worse. He tells her the number of sick people has been growing non-stop since she left. Ryuji and Lara stand at the door, completely shocked by the sight in front of them. The hall is filled to the brim with sick people, and the guy groans that they're officially out of beds. Ryuji stares at the crowd, unable to believe how many people have been taken down by this, leaving him wondering how they're going to treat everyone. Ryuji looks over the room and counts at least 30 sick people lying there. He realizes that if every single person here has the same symptoms as Lara did, he's definitely going to need more of those mushrooms to fix this. The main issue is that he can only get 3 doses out of the one large mushroom he has on him, and he only found that specific one parasitizing a wild boar by luck. Ryuji stays quiet, feeling the pressure. Standing in the doorway, he looks at all the patients and asks himself if it's even possible to make enough potions for everyone. He grips his gear and wonders if he can really pull this off. Looking back, Cecile explains how they entered the forest to travel from Morado village to the guild headquarters. Their main objective was always to reach the guild base here in the town of Grigon, and Lara notes they finally made it after Ryuji saved her from collapsing out in the woods. Ryuji and Anya look over the local map together, trying to get their bearings in the town of Grigon while setting up a home base. The guild building stands on the left, but Ryuji has somehow summoned the Sato clinic right next to it. Stepping inside, the place is a total mirror of his family's hospital back home, filled with high-tech gear and rows of beds. Ryuji wipes some sweat off his face and says they've moved the most critical patients into the clinic for now. But that's not even half of it back at the guild hall. Dozens more people are sprawled out on the floor, coughing and barely holding on. He mentions that he ran a few tests on the new arrivals, and it turns out everyone has the same thing Lara had. Looking at the results, Ryuji explains that the whole town has been hit by something called plague venom. He looks down, feeling the pressure, and says he knows exactly what ingredients are needed for the medicine, but finding them is the real problem. Cecile looks pretty worried as she wonders if they can actually find rare supplies like that around here so easily. They both stand there in silence while a patient in the bed next to them cries out in pain. The clock is definitely ticking. Ryuji shakes off the doubt. He tells himself there's no point in overthinking it right now since the situation is getting pretty heavy. He looks totally locked in and says he just has to do whatever he can to help. The whole group stands together outside the clinic. Ryuji speaks up and says that since things are this bad, he and Cecile are going to head straight into the forest to find the rare ingredients they need while he asks Anya and Lara to work together to keep an eye on the townspeople, and Lara says she's on it. Everyone gets fired up. They all shout about how they're going to save the town together. Anya leads the way back inside and tells Lara they need to get started immediately, which leads into Lara looking a little lost as she asks what they can actually do by themselves. Anya just tells her to leave it all to her. Anya shows her the supplies. She mentions they still have 2 bottles of the antidote Ryuji finished up yesterday, and she explains that he even used hospital materials to whip up more of that powder medicine Lara took before. Anya looks over the supplies and says they should dilute the mixture with some water before giving it out so it lasts longer, mentioning that while it's just temporary, it should help everyone feel a bit better. Anya then turns to Lara and tells her she needs to put on some more appropriate clothes, leaving Lara totally confused. Lara takes one look at the new outfit and can't believe her eyes, asking what she's even supposed to do with this. A moment later, they're both in nurse uniform. Anya grabs the medicine and says it's time to move, and Lara follows her lead. The scene shifts deep into the forest where the trees are thick and the light barely gets through. Ryuji is searching through the bushes, telling Cecile he's fairly sure the spot they're looking for was around here. Cecile asks where that pig ran off to, but Ryuji quickly reminds her that the animal is actually a boar. Ryuji mentions that he saw the creature head further into the woods past a certain tree, though he follows up by saying that they don't actually know what happened to it after that since they lost its trail. Ryuji is wandering through the thick woods looking pretty wiped out, he sighs to himself, thinking whatever they're hunting for isn't going to just show up easily. But right as he says that, a huge boar comes charging out of nowhere and slams into him so hard he's sent flying through the air. Ryuji hits the ground and groans in pain, but when he looks up and sees the animal, he realizes it's the exact same boar they ran into yesterday. Instead of being mad, Ryuji actually seems relieved and tells the creature he's just glad to see that it's doing okay after their last encounter. He leans in and tries to strike up a conversation, asking the boar if it remembers that mushroom spot they found together the day before. The boar just stands there with this intense look on its face, not making a sound as it stares Ryuji down. Ryuji gets a really bad feeling about the silence and starts to wonder what's going on before he can even react. The boar bites down on his hood and starts dragging him backward while he panics and tells it to wait. Cecile watches from the sidelines in total shock, yelling out for him as the boar hauls Ryuji deep into the forest and out of sight. Moving on from the woods, the sun shines over the main guild building back in town. Anya finally takes a second to breathe. Wiped out and sweating after working so hard, she looks over at Lara and the room full of resting patients, noting they finally finished giving out the treatment to everyone. Thomas sits there holding a cloth to his face, telling the girls that the stuff is amazing and he's already feeling way better. But Lara doesn't let him get too ahead of himself. She tells him straight up that he hasn't fully recovered yet. She insists that he needs to stay put and rest until the rest of Ryuji's medicine actually gets there. Thomas looks a bit awkward and sweaty, trying to argue that even this much help was enough, but he gets cut off when he calls Lara out by name. He asks her if she went and overdid things again, making her jump. He can't believe she actually tried to make it through the entire forest all on her own, reminding her that even though she used to be a knight, acting like that is just way too reckless for anyone. Lara just stands there taking the lecture while Thomas keeps going, asking her why she never listens when he tells her these things. Thomas keeps laying into Lara, telling her that if she wants to keep working at the guild, she's gotta start making calmer decisions instead of acting on impulse. Lara looks pretty beat down and sweaty, explaining that the people in this town were the only ones who took her in after she retired as a knight and ended up on the streets. She looks like she's about to cry, saying she just wanted to finally be useful to them. Ryuji watches her, just saying her name quietly while Anya stands there looking worried about the whole situation. Suddenly, Andrea sits up in his bed, looking totally exhausted as he asks Lara if she's some kind of idiot. Anya freaks out and calls out to him, asking if he's even healthy enough to be sitting up and moving around like that. Andrea's face is completely shadowed and he looks miserable. He tells her straight up that he actually feels absolutely terrible. He points out that if she really needed potions, going to the guild HQ north of town would have been a lot smarter than heading into the forest alone. He keeps lecturing her about charging in without thinking, making Lara and Anya both look totally ashamed. But then he stops himself and adds a however, catching Lara's attention and making her look up for a second. Andrea gives her a backhanded compliment, saying that Lara's thoughtless brain might actually be useful for once, leaving her standing there stunned, while he just huffs and turns away. Lara says his name quietly, but the moment is cut short when Andrea suddenly hunches over in bed. He groans that the pain is coming back, making Lara panic and yell for him. Later, Lara stands by the window looking out at the forest, her mind stuck on Ryuji, thinking that if it's him out there, she knows he'll find a way to make things right. She keeps her eyes on the distant trees, desperately hoping that he's actually going to save everyone. Meanwhile, Ryuji is having a rough time. He's literally flying through the air and crashing through wreckage like a ragdoll. He hits the ground with a massive thud and shouts in surprise as the impact knocks the wind out of him. As he's on his hands and knees groaning, a voice from the nearby bushes asks if he's doing okay. Ryuji hears the voice and looks up, his eyes going wide when he sees who's standing right there. Ryuji and Cecile are suddenly staring down a massive wall of boars, and he's completely floored by how many there are. He gets a closer look and notices something weird. Every single one of those boars has a giant mushroom growing right out of its head. Ryuji tries to pull out a potion to figure things out, but he gets hit before he can even start, leaving him groaning on the ground. Before he can even stand back up, he gets bumped again and yells out in pain, wondering what's going on. He sits there on the dirt and looks over at a tiny boar that's just standing there, feeling totally confused about why it's messing with him. As the little guy sniffs around the area, Cecile suddenly realizes what's actually happening and says she remembers something. She starts explaining that back when the girl bumped into him yesterday, things set off a chain reaction that led to him dropping a potion and a mushroom growing right on the spot, and Ryuji looks at her like it's finally clicking. Cecile continues her thought, saying that because of that one accident the situation has changed, and now all these boars are purposely bumping into him because they want him to drop more potions so they can grow more mushrooms. Ryuji looks at the boar and wonders if it's actually just trying to save its friends, realizing that it wasn't just being violent for the sake of it, but he still yells when it bumps him again. He tries to tell the little guy to stop because he's actually trying to help, but since it won't listen, he decides to just go for it and pulls out a massive stash of potion bottles he's been keeping. Grabbing a huge armful of them, he mentions he's got plenty of face lotion to use for this. So he runs over to the massive mushrooms to start the process of getting everything cleared out. Cecile jumps in to help too, running through the area to rip the mushrooms off the boars while the animals just stand there sparkling, finally looking healthy and happy again after being cured. Ryuji takes a second to breathe, looking totally wiped out from all the manual labor and staring at the literal mountain of mushroom caps they piled up. He says this should definitely be enough. Ryuji looks at the massive pile of mushrooms and realizes the real challenge is just moving all of it, considering it took both of them a good while just to carry a single one of those heavy caps. He starts stressing out because even if they use potions to keep their energy up, they're losing way too much time. Looking over at the stack, he asks Cecile if she has any kind of magic that could help them transport everything, but Cecile just tells him her black magic is only meant for fighting, so she can't really help with the lifting. Ryuji realizes they're just wasting daylight standing there and overthinking the whole situation, so he tells her they should just start moving the stuff piece by piece and get the potion making started. Cecile agrees, and the two of them lean down to grab another one of the giant mushroom caps, struggling to haul the heavy thing across the forest floor as they slowly work through the pile. While they're busy working, something hidden deep in the dark bushes is watching them with glowing eyes. Something suddenly bursts out from the thick trees and bushes nearby. Ryuji jumps back in shock as a voice yells out that they finally found him. He realizes it's just Garnet, who stands there looking pretty proud of herself while she confirms she's back. Ryuji is still confused and asks her why she even showed up here. Garnet flies around him in her fairy form, explaining that she actually forgot to give him her blessing the other day, so she made sure to mention how she went way out of her way just to track him down. She keeps complaining about having to search for him since he wasn't in the forest, and Ryuji just scratches his head and apologizes. But then it clicks for him. He realizes that if he gets some kind of magical blessing right now, it might be the perfect way to finally move all those heavy mushrooms without breaking his back. Hoping for some extra strength, he asks her what kind of blessing she's planning on giving him. Garnet gives a little laugh, looking pretty full of herself while she tells Ryuji to get ready to be amazed. She builds up the suspense, telling him to just wait for it because her blessing is finally coming. And with a dramatic pose, she shouts that she's giving him black magic, though Ryuji just stands there looking completely bored. Garnet gets annoyed at his dry reaction, yelling that this kind of power is actually a huge deal for humans, so Ryuji just awkwardly says thanks. He thinks to himself that he really doesn't have any use for dark spells while he's just trying to move mushrooms, but he figures it's fine to have just in case it ends up being useful down the road, so he tells her to go for it, and Garnet tells him to stay right there while she gets everything ready. She flies right up to his face, getting way into his personal space, and starts the ritual with a bunch of sparkles appearing. Suddenly Garnet lets out a loud yell like she just realized something went wrong or she got too embarrassed, leaving Ryuji standing there in total shock as a notification pops up, confirming he officially picked up a brand new skill. Ryuji gets hit with a bright flash of light as a notification pops up, letting him know that he finally unlocked the storage skill for his warehouse magic. He just stands there looking completely confused, trying to wrap his head around what warehouse magic even means. He turns back to ask what the deal is with this weird power, but Garnet is already flying off, wondering if she messed something up. The little fairy just gives him this super awkward, silent smile like she's trying to hide how much she panicked, and before he can even say another word, she says her goodbyes and flies off into the distance, leaving Ryuji annoyed that he got ditched again. Now that he's all on his own by the trees, he starts second-guessing himself and wonders what he's supposed to do next, but he eventually figures there's no harm in just testing it out, so he decides to give the new ability a shot. He pulls up his skill menu and focuses on the new warehouse magic option, getting ready to see what it actually does. Ryuji holds his hands out and shouts the command for storage, and immediately this crazy energy starts flowing out of him. Suddenly, a huge grid of black cubes appears right in front of him, marking out his brand new inventory space. Ryuji's eyes go wide as the magic actually starts working, and he can't believe how bright the glowing light is while he watches all the mushrooms get sucked right into that weird digital grid. Moving over to the guild hall, things aren't looking good at all because inside the building, a bunch of people are collapsed on the floor, and the staff mentions the symptoms are already starting to show up again. Lara looks completely stressed out, admitting they've officially run out of any medicine they can use. Just then, a massive flash of light hits the room and catches everyone off guard, making the staff yell out for Ryuji as he and Cecile finally walk through the door, looking totally wiped out from the trip. Ryuji doesn't even take a break and tells them he's going to start making the medicine right this second. But the girl watching him is confused and asks where he's even keeping the ingredients since his hands are empty. He just holds up his hand and activates his storage magic, calling out the command to pull everything from his inventory. Everyone is completely floored by the massive mountain of ingredients piled up outside the building, and someone can't help but yell out about how much stuff they actually managed to bring back. Ryuji explains that his new skill is basically a cheat code for storage, letting him compress huge piles of items into a tiny digital grid so he can carry them around and pull them out whenever he needs to. Anya starts laughing, mentioning that the fairy's little mistake with the magic ended up being the best thing that could have happened for them, while Ryuji just gives a sheepish smile and jokes that maybe the fairy was just jealous and wanted a cool ability like that for herself. He gets serious again and tells Anya that he's going to start turning all these mushrooms into potions right now. So, she needs to get the rest of the crew ready to distribute the medicine to everyone in town, and Anya quickly tells him she's got it handled. Anya heads over to check on Andrea first, who's finally sitting up in bed and looking way better with his dose of medicine sitting right there on the table. The staff starts moving through the halls with arms full of bottles, handing them out to the guys who look like they've been waiting forever for a drink of the stuff. Even the younger kids are pitching in to help, handing out the potions to the elderly who look totally relieved to finally be getting some help. Everyone who was collapsed on the floor starts taking their medicine, and you can tell the whole vibe in the room is finally starting to change for the better. The main hall is packed with townspeople finally getting their hands on the medicine. Everyone is drinking up, and for a second, it looks like things are finally turning around. Ryuji stands back and looks at the crowd, saying he's sure this is going to be what helps everyone recover. Anya stays close by while he gives her one last set of instructions. He tells her to make sure the recovery potions go to the ones who are the most weakened first, and she gives him a quick yes before heading off. Later, Ryuji sits alone in the office, looking totally drained. He can't stop thinking about why every person in the entire town was hit with the exact same type of poison. Anya suddenly slides the door open and calls his name. He looks up and asks her what's wrong, seeing the worried look on her face. She looks down, looking like she's struggling to find the right words, and mentions how some people are turning a blind eye to the reality of the situation. She explains that for some of the people who already took the medicine, things aren't working out. She tells him that even after drinking the potion, their symptoms haven't gotten any better. Ryuji is completely shocked to hear the news, but then Anya shows him one of the patients, an elf girl who looks like she's in a lot of pain. Anya asks him if he can please come and take a look at them right away. The clinic sits quiet in the dark, but inside, the situation is getting way more complicated than they ever expected. Ryuji looks down at the sick elf girl and says it must be her. He stays quiet for a second trying to figure out why the girl isn't healing. He says he doesn't get why she's still sick after taking the potion, and wonders if she might be the only one here with a completely different disease. He decides to check her using his examination skill. The display shows her name is Emilia and lists the plague as her first condition, but the second one is just a mystery. Ryuji thinks it looks like the same illness at first, but then he gets the feeling that something else is happening underneath it all. Anya watches him think and suggests that he might be able to tell more if he touches the patient directly. Ryuji is a bit surprised and wonders if the girl is even moving as he leans in closer to get a better look at her condition, but things get awkward fast. Emilia mentions that he took them off for her himself, and Ryuji can't believe what just happened. He completely loses it, turning bright red and covering his face while yelling that he's sorry over and over again. Even with the examination window still open, Ryuji is way too embarrassed to focus on the results right now. Everything suddenly lights up with this crazy spinning star-shaped flash, and Ryuji just stares at it, completely shocked by whatever is going on right in front of him. Back at the Sato clinic, the morning sun is finally starting to hit the building, while Ryuji rubs his eyes and yawns, looking like he's about to collapse from exhaustion. He thinks about how he spent the entire night trying to treat Emilia, but when he looks at her status window, it says she's still got the plague and is now dealing with confusion too. He covers his face, trying to wrap his head around what could have caused that new status to show up. But then Anya walks in and tells him breakfast is ready, asking if he's finally ready to eat. Ryuji just repeats the word food like he's totally out of it, and Anya smiles, bringing a plate over to him. Suddenly, a huge scream rings out through the whole clinic, making the people outside stop and look, while Ryuji yells that everyone has it all wrong. Anya just stands there with her cheeks puffed out in a huge pout, looking pretty annoyed with him. The scene shifts over to the Grigon Guild building where things are pretty awkward. Someone asks why the two of them look so mad, leaving Ryuji just sitting there with his head in his hands while Anya pouts in the corner. Lara walks up to Ryuji and tells him she had a chance to talk with Emilia while he was knocked out. He snaps out of it, surprised to hear they spoke. She gets a serious look on her face and starts explaining that she finally figured out why everyone in this town ended up getting poisoned. It turns out it's all because they were drinking the water from the river. Ryuji repeats the river like he can't believe it, and Lara nods, saying people usually just stick to the well water. The problem started when a rumor went around town claiming the river water was filled with some kind of holy power, and because of that, everyone in the area started going out of their way to drink it as much as they could. Lara adds that Emilia was even using the river water for her cooking and laundry, which explains her condition. Ryuji just looks totally stunned by the whole situation. Lara points out that since Emilia is so religious, it makes sense she'd be the first one to believe a story like that. Andrea explains that Emilia's condition got so bad because she was drinking way more of that contaminated water than any of the other villagers. But there's something else that doesn't quite sit right with him. He mentions that the person who went around spreading the fake rumor about the water has completely vanished from town. Ryuji looks totally caught off guard by the news. Andrea keeps going, saying that according to what Emilia remembered, the person behind it all was wearing a mask and a long black robe. Ryuji stays quiet, trying to process the idea of someone doing this on purpose. Andrea admits he has no idea what someone would gain from poisoning an entire town like this. But right now, their main goal has to be finding exactly what's causing the poison in the first place. Looking at the map, they've narrowed it down and believe the source is coming from somewhere further upstream. Since the situation is so serious, they decided to send Lara to investigate the upper river area because of her experience as a former knight. Ryuji can't believe they're sending her out there alone and yells out, asking if she's really the one going. Andrea looks pretty stressed. He admits he's really worried about letting Lara head out on this mission all by herself. He says he'd honestly go with her if he could, but he's just not back to full strength yet after everything that happened. Ryuji stands there thinking it over. Cecile looks at him with that look in her eyes like she's already made up her mind. So Ryuji starts to volunteer, but Cecile beats him to it and yells out that she's going along with them too. She looks totally determined. She explains that she can use her magic to support Lara while they're out there. Then she turns to Ryuji and asks if he's coming along. He laughs and says obviously he is, but Anya's just standing there in the back looking annoyed. Ryuji looks over at her and asks what she wants to do. He can tell things are feeling a little awkward between them right now. Anya looks away for a second before saying she's coming too. Ryuji can definitely tell she's still mad at him. But moving on, Lara gets the gear ready and tells the group they'll be traveling upstream on horseback to save time. She looks completely locked in. She tells everyone to stay focused as they finally head out to find the source of the poison. Ryuji is totally blown away by Lara. He's just realized how cool it is that she used to be a knight. Lara gets right to business and asks everyone how they feel about riding horses. Anya and Cecile both speak up, saying they've got a bit of experience. Cecile says she's totally fine with it, but Ryuji is just standing there looking completely lost. He starts to sweat and admits he's actually never been on a horse before in his life. Lara just smiles and tells him not to worry since most people are in the same boat, and it's really just Cecile and Anya who are the special cases. She takes a second to think about how to handle the situation, and then she suggests that Ryuji should just ride along on the back of Anya's horse. Both of them look like they can't believe she just said that. Lara explains that since she's wearing all this heavy armor, there's no way she can take a second person, and Cecile is way too small to keep the balance right if he rode with her. So she finishes by saying since Anya is a beastman, she's plenty strong enough to handle his weight. Lara finishes explaining the plan. Since Anya is a beastman, she's strong enough to support someone like Ryuji on the same horse. Ryuji rubs the back of his head and awkwardly says he'll take her up on that, while Anya just looks away and says she understands. As they get ready to move out, Anya tells Ryuji he needs to hold on to her. It's a bit of an intense start, especially since Ryuji can tell she's still being cold toward him, though he knows deep down it's mostly his own fault. He looks over to see Lara giving him a big thumbs up and a wink, making him realize she was actually trying to help him out. While they set off, Ryuji thinks to himself about how he really hopes they can eventually make up and be cool again. The ride is way rougher than he expected. He starts panicking because the horse is shaking a ton and he's heard falling off is fatal. The horse suddenly jerks and Ryuji lets out a shout as he starts to lose his balance, so he reflexively reaches out and grabs onto the first thing he can find, squeezing tight to stay on. His hand clamps down hard on Anya's waist. He's just trying not to die, but it makes for an awkward ride. Anya starts yelling at Ryuji to back off because he's basically bear hugging her from behind while they ride. She tries to focus on the road, but tells him that clinging to her like that makes it impossible to control the horse. Ryuji doesn't care about the logistics and just shouts back that he's way too terrified to let go right now, as the horse keeps charging down the path while everyone listens to the sound of Ryuji losing his mind. Lara watches from the back and realizes her plan to set them up totally backfired, while Cecile tries calling out to him. Just then, the horse suddenly rears up and goes wild. Throwing everything into a complete mess, Ryuji loses his grip and goes flying through the air with a loud yell, heading straight for the ground until he slams headfirst into a giant rock on the side of the trail with a nasty thud. He's left slumped over the boulder, looking so out of it that his soul is practically floating out of his mouth. Anya panics and rushes over to check on him, shouting his name to see if he's even still alive. Anya looks pretty down as she apologizes to Ryuji, saying she's sorry she couldn't keep the horse under control. Ryuji tells her to stop because it wasn't her fault at all, but he admits it was actually on him for being too scared to let go of her, though he tries to lighten the mood by joking that maybe they reached the upstream faster because of it. Anya isn't laughing. Ryuji looks around the dark cave area and asks where they even are. While he confirms they've definitely reached the upstream of the river, but things seem a bit weird. He kneels down by the edge and points out that the water looks way darker than what flows through the city. He starts to wonder if the actual source of all the poison is hidden further inside the cave. Both of them stop and stare in shock at what's right in front of them, as Ryuji realizes there's a massive group of strange striped frogs covering the entire area in the shallow water. A massive group of striped frogs is just sitting there in the shallow water, filling up the cave floor, and Ryuji gets a closer look at them, wondering if they're just normal frogs, but they've got these weird star-shaped eyes. He stands there with Anya, looking at the sheer number of them, and starts to wonder if these things are the ones spreading all the poison. Just then, Cecile and Lara come running into the cave. Cecile calls out to her big brother while Ryuji is surprised to see them show up, but Lara stops in her tracks and looks at the creatures, asking if these are actually poison frogs. She looks at one closely and mentions that this species isn't supposed to be this toxic. Something is definitely wrong here. Cecile suddenly points toward the back of the group and tells everyone to wait and look over there, because something huge is moving in the shadows behind the small ones, and a giant glowing eye appears. Ryuji completely loses it when a massive frog with a weird crest on its head crawls out, It's way bigger than the rest. Cecile explains that this is probably what people call a special variant, leaving Ryuji to realize they're in for a much bigger fight. Ever since the Demon Lord showed up, his dark power has been messing with the world in all kinds of ways. And it turns out these special variants are just one of the side effects of all that energy. The way these strong monsters are born is by evolving and constantly absorbing the dark power from all the weaker monsters they can find, which explains the weird star pattern in their eyes. Ryuji starts to panic a bit, thinking about how if this keeps happening, won't monsters all over the world just keep evolving and getting way more violent than they already are. Lara looks pretty fed up as she pulls her sword, clearly over these monsters and ready to end things. She charges in, yelling about how she can't believe the townspeople are suffering because of these guys, while Ryuji calls out to her. She starts wrecking the frogs with some huge swings, cutting through the pack like it's nothing. Ryuji yells for Cecile to back Lara up with some magic, and Cecile is already on it, ready to jump into the fight. Ryuji tells Anya to stay back so the horses don't get caught up in the fight, and Anya quickly agrees while Ryuji starts to panic, thinking about how he gave the orders but has no idea what he's actually supposed to do. Since Cecile decides to take charge and says she's going to blow the enemy away with her magic, getting ready to launch a massive tornado spell that slams right into the cave walls, causing the entire tunnel to shake as rocks and debris start flying everywhere from the impact. Everyone starts losing it as the ceiling begins to crumble, and Ryuji and Cecile have to duck for cover, realizing the cave is way too fragile for them to be using wind magic like that without bringing the whole place down, making Ryuji realize that Lara is now the only one who can actually fight in here as she charges forward, and she starts absolutely wrecking the monsters, moving like a blur and cutting through them with some heavy swings. Lara looks totally focused as she calls the enemies small fries, clearly ready to wipe them all out. Lara jumps into the air and brings her sword down hard, yelling that these things are no match for a former knight. The impact is huge, sending a shockwave through the cave that just blasts the monsters and rocks everywhere. Lara stands in the middle of the carnage and lets out a cheer, happy that she actually pulled it off. But then she locks eyes with a monster that looks a bit different and calls it a special individual, telling it that it's next. The creature's eyes start glowing with these weird star patterns. It's definitely about to pull something crazy. It opens its mouth wide and starts charging up a roar, and Lara stays ready while the whole area begins to shake. Suddenly, magic circles appear all over the ground, and more of those frog monsters start popping up out of nowhere. Ryuji realizes the monsters just called for backup as a massive horde appears, led by a giant frog that towers over them. The situation is getting out of hand. Ryuji asks himself what he's supposed to do since it feels like there's no end to them. One of the frogs gets dangerously close, and someone screams Ryuji's name while he just stands there, totally shocked. Ryuji yells for her to watch out as Lara suddenly throws herself in the way to block a massive. The monster breathes out a huge blast of energy right at them, leaving Lara taking the full force of the hit. It sends her flying back while Ryuji just screams her name. She hits the ground hard, completely wiped out by the power of the attack. Ryuji calls out to her again as she lies there, and he tries to get over to her as fast as he can. Lara groans in pain. And Ryuji realizes that the last hit from the monster poisoned her again. Cecile looks over completely worried, while Ryuji stands there just trying to process everything. He feels terrible because he knows she only got hurt like this because she was trying to protect him. Ryuji asks what he's even supposed to do now, and Cecile tells him she knows it's bad. But then, he remembers the potions he made back in town and starts pouring one down her throat to help her. Lara is in a bad way, coughing up blood even after the potion, and Ryuji just watches in shock, wondering why she isn't healing yet. He's completely lost and starts panicking about what he's supposed to do next. Part of him wants to just head back, but he knows he can't just leave the frogs behind like this, especially since he can see the poison is still leaking into the river and making things worse. He looks down at the frogs and realizes he has no way left to fight, cursing under his breath because he feels totally useless. He covers his face, questioning why he's even there, thinking that instead of actually helping, he's just dragging everyone else down with him, since he doesn't have magic like Cecile or skills like Anya. He's just stuck thinking about how he isn't being useful at all. But then Lara manages to sit up and calls his name, breaking him out of his head. Ryuji yells out her name, but Lara just gives a weak little laugh and asks him if she looks pathetic right now. She says the guild master was right about her not keeping her cool, and that's why she got poisoned in the first place, admitting that maybe she's just not built for this kind of job. Ryuji tries to tell her she's wrong, but Lara keeps talking, telling him it's a fact that he has some pretty big weaknesses, pointing out how he has zero combat skills, can't use any magic, and doesn't even know how to ride a horse. She even brings up how he pissed off Anya, telling him he actually was kind of pathetic today. Ryuji can only groan because he knows she's right, but then she softens up, saying the only reason they saved the town from that plague something she couldn't do by herself, was completely thanks to him and his help. Lara looks down, telling him that this isn't about figuring out who's better than who. She explains that just like how he has his own way of doing things, everyone has a part to play. Lara tells Ryuji that since he saved the town, there have to be things that only he can do, and she follows it up with a desperate plea, looking him in the eyes while she asks him to please take care of the town for her. Ryuji looks away, wondering to himself if there really is anything he can do or if a solution like that even exists, while right in front of him, the massive frog monster starts glowing, making Ryuji think about how loud and annoying the thing is. He feels frustrated that he's just standing there overthinking everything while the enemy prepares to attack, especially since the big boss is just summoning a bunch of smaller minions to do its dirty work. It bugs him that the main monster isn't even doing anything itself, just sitting back while the small ones swarm them. Cecile loses her cool, yelling about how annoying the situation is and saying she'd blow the frog away with magic if they weren't in a cave, which gives Ryuji a sudden idea. He repeats the thought of using her magic to blow it away and realizes that might be the key, so he clenches his fist, finally finding the resolve to take action. Ryuji turns back and calls out to Anya, telling her to grab Lara and the horses and head for the exit immediately, which leaves Anya completely caught off guard. She starts to protest, worried about what might happen if Ryuji stays behind alone, but he just reaches down for his weapon and tells her he's going to be fine. Standing his ground, Ryuji grips his sword with a look of total focus and tells her he's actually found a way to win. Anya looks at him for a long moment, clearly stressed out but realizing he isn't going to budge, so she finally gives in. She says she understands and starts leading the horses out of the cave, leaving Cecile standing there with Ryuji. She looks up at him and asks what the big plan is, and Ryuji pulls out a glowing bottle, asking Cecile to drink the magic potion he's holding out. While she takes it, he grabs a different bottle for himself, explaining it's just a nourishment potion, which makes Cecile stop and wonder what that even is, since she's never heard of a potion like that before. Ryuji's inner thoughts continue about how hard the hike through the forest actually was, and how he had to hide a certain secret. He holds up a potion bottle and tells Cecile they're going to use this medicine to get a temporary strength boost. While holding the bottle, Ryuji starts giving Cecile instructions on what she needs to do once he gets to the special variant. The sun beats down on the distant, rocky plateaus of the mountain range. Outside, Anya finally spots the horses that Cecile and the rest of the group used to get here. She looks at the distance they've covered and figures they should be safe at this spot. But she still feels uneasy turning around. Anya sees Lara is totally exhausted, slumped against a tree while the horses rest nearby. Anya softly says Ryuji's name, clearly stressed out about him being back in the cave all alone. Looking back toward the cave, she wonders out loud how Ryuji even plans on taking down a monster that big, and right then, the massive monster lets out a deafening roar that shakes the whole area. Ryuji and Cecile stand their ground against a massive frog boss and a whole swarm of smaller ones. Ryuji tips back the bottle and chugs the strength potion to get his body ready for the fight. He grips his sword hilt as the medicine kicks in, feeling the power surge through him, looking ahead with total focus. He asks Cecile if she's ready to back him up. Cecile charges up her magic and tells her big brother she's all set to go. Ryuji lunges forward, shouting that he's coming straight for the special grade monster. He leaps high into the air, diving right into the middle of the striped frog pack. While moving, he realizes his body feels amazingly light, and he can't believe how fast he is. The heavy sword feels like a toy in his hands as he finds he can swing it with zero effort. He lands a massive hit that sends the smaller frogs flying, carving a path through the swarm. Ryuji looks back at the swarm of monsters following him, thinking he needs to avoid these small ones and just focus on getting to the big boss frog that's leading the whole group. He moves so fast that the giant frog is caught off guard, barely having time to react as the monster opens its mouth wide, charging up a bright flash of light to blast him. Ryuji doesn't flinch, swinging his blade while shouting that he won't let the monster get a single shot off before he lands his own hit. The strike connects with total force, causing a massive explosion of light and fluid as Ryuji screams for Cecile, telling her that the opening is finally here and it's time to finish this. And Cecile yells back that she's already shooting as she fires a massive magic blast that tears through the air, completely engulfing the area in a blinding light. Ryuji puts everything into his swing, thinking that if he can just crush this specimen's throat, it won't be able to call any more allies for help. So he slams his blade down, with Cecile yelling that they should just blow the whole cave up to end it. Everything starts falling apart, rocks and dust filling the air as the ceiling drops. Ryuji watches the explosion work, shouting that this should finally wipe out every last frog. He starts to relax a bit, thinking that once all these frogs are finally gone, the river water should eventually clear up and go back to normal. Cecile notices the chaos is settling, mentioning how the wind is finally dying down. The dust clears as the two of them stand there in the silence, but Ryuji's expression suddenly shifts to total worry as he says this is bad. Ryuji is barely hanging on as the blast hits, saying he feels like he's about to get blown away. The force is just insane. He says he never thought Cecile's magic would be this powerful, especially since he's getting tossed through the air. He says he probably didn't even need to drink that potion, but now he's got bigger problems. He says the vital potion is wearing off and the pain is hitting, his hands start shaking, and he can't keep a solid grip on his sword anymore. He says he can't hold on and can't believe it's happening. His sword just slips right out of his hands. He screams as he loses his footing and starts falling into the dark, realizing too late that the bottom of the cave is actually a cliff. He looks completely terrified while tumbling through the air, saying that if he falls all the way down, he's definitely going to die. Just then, Cecile calls out his name from above. Anya pulls up on her horse right at the edge, looking completely stunned. Someone screams her name as she stares down in a total panic. Ryuji is speechless as he tumbles, but Anya doesn't hesitate and leaps off, reaching out into the empty air while Ryuji tries to grab onto anything, and their hands finally lock together with a solid grip. Anya looks him in the eyes and tells him that this time, he better hold on tight. Ryuji just smiles back at her and says he definitely will. Up on the cliff, Cecile is laughing and waving down at them like it's a joke. As a massive flash of light hits the horizon, Ryuji says they need to get the clinic ready, because he's got to check on Lara's condition as soon as they get back. Ryuji starts his medical checkup, holding the patient's hand as his examination skill kicks in. The status window confirms it is the 7-day curse, and Ryuji can't believe what he's seeing as a strange light appears. He spots a dark crest on the skin and wonders if these are the exact same symptoms Anya had. While Anya stands nearby, Ryuji looks at Lara and wonders if that specific mark is on her chest too. It's right there, and seeing the crest confirms his worst fears about the situation. Ryuji acts fast, pulling out a potion and telling Lara she needs to drink this immediately. As the mark starts to fade away, Ryuji realizes that this definitely is the same curse they dealt with before. Anya notices him acting weird and asks what's up, but he just laughs it off and says it's nothing. He figures there is no reason to freak her out yet, so he keeps his thoughts to himself for now, but he can't stop thinking about how that unique monster had the same exact crest on its body. Ryuji finishes up his thoughts, really hoping that everything happening is just a big coincidence. Way out in the mountains, a massive pack of small monsters is crawling through the valley floor. Watching them from high above is a mysterious girl with horns, just standing there in total silence. She takes off her mask and looks down, wondering if she actually messed something up with her plan, but then she shrugs it off, saying the thing she sent was just a low-level monster anyway. She decides it did a good enough job since it managed to throw the humans into a state of total chaos. Even so, she can't shake the feeling that something is off, specifically when it comes to that one human noting that not even the best royal alchemist should be able to whip up a cure for a whole city that fast. Back with the group, Anya is thinking about the enemy they faced and asks Ryuji if he saw that X Mark II, while Ryuji just holds his head in his hands, wondering who that guy was and who's actually pulling the strings. The group makes their way back through the woods, and even the horse is feeling the weight of the long trip, but Lara is in high spirits, saying she wants to get back fast to let everyone know the plague is finally over. She turns back to the group with a big smile and thanks everyone for all the hard work they put in, but as they get closer to the gate, she realizes the entire town has already gathered to meet them. The second they step inside, the crowd goes wild with confetti and banners, screaming for the savior who healed them. Ryuji is standing there in total shock, staring at the massive celebration and wondering what he got himself into. Later on, the guy is finally able to sit down, letting out a heavy sigh because of how exhausting the whole scene was, realizing he never actually expected to be treated like some legendary hero just for doing his job. Lara is still looking super energetic, though she mentions how fired up Lala is about throwing a huge party tonight. But over on the couch, Anya and Cecile are completely finished, with Anya saying she's not moving another inch today. Anya is totally wiped out and suggests they both just take it easy for the rest of the day, and Ryuji agrees that he's definitely ready for a break. But then he remembers something and thinks about how he really needs to get all those materials from the mission organized soon. He starts heading off, figuring that if he can just preserve the pollen and those mushrooms he found in the forest, he'll be able to keep making those high-end potions whenever he wants. So as he's walking up the stairs, a huge magic circle suddenly starts glowing right under his feet, and a notification pops up, telling him he's collected so many medicinal herbs that he's actually hit a milestone. And then the system explains that the house's magic level just went up, which officially unlocked the attic for him to use. Ryuji is standing there in total disbelief,